Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tuesday, June 18th, and we are broadcasting live from beautiful downtown Aspen. And this is the regular work session of the Board of County Commissioners. And up first this afternoon is the mid-year update from CORE. We have Michael Port, Ryland French is here also, and John Doherty are on deck. And the rest of your team. The first thing I'm going to do, John, is ask you to invite or at least introduce your staff to us so the community and the board who are online watching, except for Patty, who's on transit, can meet your staff. So go ahead, take it away.
All right. Red's on.
Red's on.
All right. Thanks so much for having us for this mid-year update. John Doherty, CEO at CORE, and with me from the CORE team so far, we have Ryland French, who is a senior technical advisor to CORE. We have Tim Johns, who's our senior concierge. We have Jamie McManus, who is our communications and engagement specialist, and Brittany LeClaire, who heads up fundraising and development for the organization. We may have a few others join us along the way. They're hoping to make it in. They asked for the address, so hopefully they'll join us along the way. And I don't know if you want to provide any tee up there.
Yeah, thank you. Michael Port, Climate Action Analyst. Just want to thank CORE in advance for providing us with this mid-year update. We provided grant funding to them for their scope of work for 2024, and part of that was to come in mid-year to give us an update on their progress. So that's why we're here today. So take it away, John.
You know, before you do, can I just, since I'm the BoCC representative to CORE, I would just like to add a little bit more context for everybody who might not be following it as closely as I do. I just want to say that what we've done recently with CORE, this isn't a comprehensive list, but CORE has been working with Response on their project, English in Action on their new project, the Yellow Brick School, Habitat for Humanity, the ARC Aspen Youth Center, hundreds of APSHA projects so far, the Lumberyard with the city, ACES, the Farm Collaborative. In process now is work with the Snowmass Chapel and with Anderson Ranch. And CORE is being proactive in trying to get in on the building process and the permit process before it even permits are even issued. Additionally, what CORE has been doing, and that's my department with the chair of the development committee at CORE, is we've been looking for additional sources of income beyond what comes from the county and the city. And those have included some philanthropy, grants from Fed and state grants, fee-for-service, where CORE is actually going out and doing the work for fee-for-service like they do with some of the county. So it's pretty exciting to see an organization change as rapidly it has, I'd say, post-COVID, really. So much has happened. And with that, I want to tee it up and hand it back to you guys. Thanks.
All right. So I'm going to walk you through. We provided a memo that covers sort of high level what's been happening at CORE over the first 6 months in the process of this year's funding cycle. And first and foremost, just want to acknowledge that we've been working closely with the staff team, particularly with Michael, in regular meetings that occur between the staff and CORE staff on a monthly basis so that we can consistently sort of monitor progress on what we've committed to delivering through the grant and the grants and funding that's been awarded through Pitkin County. So I'm going to hit on where we are so far this year, give you a little bit of a tee up on what is coming forward. And I asked the staff to join us today for a couple of reasons. One, because this work and the pace at which CORE is continuing to evolve its work would not be happening without this incredible team of folks. So I'm going to point out some of the things that we've been doing to evolve the organization thanks to the work that each of them is doing for CORE, and talk a little bit about the importance of recognizing this is CORE's 30th year. We'll be kicking off celebrations in August, so I'll give you some more information about that before we wrap up. But really reminding us that this 30th year celebration is a celebration of our community, because the founding of CORE happened out of maybe not this room specifically, but out of the commitments of local government agencies and the leadership of that time 30 years ago to say we need an organization to help advance this work. So this time we're going to be talking about what's happened in the last 6 months, and I'll just sort of walk you through this and get this off my screen. So the first thing, our foundational services, the way we've structured our grant funding for this year is around key components. The first is our foundational services, which is our assessment services, our grants, incentives, and rebates. So when you think about that work, Tim Johns, who I mentioned earlier in the back, he is really the man behind all of that process, from the initial advising when someone calls and asks for help and guidance, to processing and giving direction around where a grant or an incentive or rebate may be offered to help people move along in that process. And then Ryland complements that work in his role as a subject matter expertise and technical advisor to make sure that we're putting the best recommendations forward. So this just gives you an overview here of rebates and completed grants. Savings in terms of carbon savings are at 208. A percentage of those rebates and grants awarded to our priority participants. So as part of our commitment as CORE in alignment with the Justice 40 goals, our commitment is that 40% of our grants, incentives, and rebates are going out to individuals who meet this community priority population. So those are typically our workforce citizens, folks who are our school teachers, folks who are living in workforce housing, and everyday folks who need access to these resources. We've awarded 4 large grants, and grant awards are over 100,000 so far this year. 37 rebates and over 200,000 in rebate funding so far. And then we have highlighted here the heat pump rebates and grants. We're calling this out because this is really a high-level focus area of CORE in our
Before
work.
you change the page,
Yeah.
208 in terms of, that's metric tons of CO2 savings as you
Correct.
calculated. Okay, so it's 208 metric tons.
Yep.
Trying to visualize that. Thank you.
So I want to hit on a couple of highlights for our foundational services and sort of how we've continued to evolve. So CORE this past year got some feedback from our partners, so the staff here at Pickens County, City of Aspen, Eagle County, Town of Basalt, suggesting ways that we could improve our quarterly reporting. So we've done a significant amount of work on those to improve our graphics, highlighting the spotlights and the progress that we're making, and really trying to focus on the regional updates and where we're making progress at a regional level to scale up the work. So I'm going to point out Jamie and her support of Kate, who is not with us today, but Kate is on the programs team and supports a lot of the work that Tim does, Ryland does, in terms of some of the other work we're doing with the BIQ project, as well as our other program advising services. Along the way, we've also moved forward with sourcing additional components. You'll hear me reference this along the way of how CORE is trying to be more nimble and responsive to community needs. So with Ryland's guidance and working with Tim, sourcing experts from outside the Valley when necessary in order to meet specific community needs. So there were some projects that had stalled along the way. We've been able to move those forward in our multifamily workforce housing in both Elgibel and Snowmass Village. So again, a way that CORE is trying to adapt and respond to community needs in really moving those goals forward. We've also had some really good progress, again, with the work and advising services between Ryland and Tim to enable an existing mixed-use commercial building in Aspen to do an engineering analysis, specify their needs, and then do what they needed to do in order to move to an electric air-to-water heat pump for their primary space heating. Again, looking at the opportunity, evaluating, and providing that advising service consistently is a key role that CORE has provided for a long time, but continues to be where we focus a lot of our energy and the dollars to advance the mission of CORE and the work of the community. And then the last thing, and Greg hinted at this, along with a long list of other community partners that you all know typically fund, are well aware of, but in this first 6 months, providing funding for response for the domestic abuse shelter, as well as English in Action to do all electric designs for their buildings. So that is what we're trying to highlight here is, CORE is the action side of climate action, and we are trying to really help the community understand that pretty much any building you go into in some form or fashion, whether it is advising services or awarding grants, incentives, or rebates of some sort, CORE is playing a significant role in all aspects of our community throughout the valley. A couple of other things highlighted here from our advising services: all electric build out for a new child care facility in Basalt Stotts Mill neighborhood, and then increasing our community outreach engagement and advising has resulted in re-engagement of 7 APSHA HOAs to improve resources, so adapting and modifying our programs and resources to remove barriers and help past stalled projects move forward.
Insulation, energy conservation, electrification. Oh, sorry. So these projects specifically, what are those?
I don't know that I can speak to specifics of the projects, but Ryland or Tim, anything specific to those you want to highlight? You can come on.
Sure.
Past barriers. Just trying to figure out what were the past barriers and how are you moving them past them?
Yeah, thank you. So few major past barriers have been finding contractors that will show up and provide quotes and comprehensive quotes. As we look more at heat pump projects, fuel switching, electrification, almost always that has to be a combination of an HVAC contractor and an electrician. So re-engaging HOAs to say, hey, we're here with you to bring in contractors, help you solicit bids and review them to move forward. Because we might touch 150 projects in a year in the valley, we really get to know which contractors are reputable and have availability and reasonable costs. So that's one main barrier. Another is who's going to manage this project. If you're talking about an APSHA HOA with the volunteer HOA board, and especially for some of the smaller properties, they might not have a property manager who is familiar with like scoping and managing a construction project. So we're offering them owner's rep services to say, hey, we'll bring in someone and bake it into the cost of the project to manage the project for you, so you're not saying no to this project because you don't want to manage it as the volunteer member. So that's another one. And then costs continue to be a barrier. So just continuing to, well, for one, this year we significantly increased the grant amounts that we're offering projects, especially affordable housing HOAs, and also continuing to look for outside funding from outside the valley that we could bring in to help these projects move forward where they didn't in the past.
I wanted to ask, and I don't know if my board has questions. If they do, the ones online will have to alert us somehow. The question I had was, you're getting to know the local contractors. What do you see in terms of local contractor knowledge, and are they stepping up so they understand these new systems? I keep hearing, that the reason the new technologies are so expensive is because the contractors really have to cover their butts in case something they don't understand goes wrong. How adept are they becoming, and do we have enough people doing that?
We are on a good trajectory, still a ways to go, and CORE is working on that. So we have, the contractors that we're seeing more volume of projects and heat pumps specifically, and then there's still those contractors and distributors who sell the equipment that are still, they haven't taken that plunge into what is the next generation of technologies that's in demand. And John, I know, could speak to it better. We received a Department of Energy grant to help answer some of those questions in an active way. So I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, and it's referenced later, but to answer your question specifically, CORE did receive funding to conduct a green workforce study across the region. So we are wrapping up that study now. We contracted with a consultant who specializes in workforce development, and they're working across all 3 counties to talk to not only contractors, but the educational providers, and then organizations like us to find out, so where are you getting stalled out, and where is it a capacity issue? We're pleased to know that preliminary indications from our workforce themselves and from the owners of these companies are, we know we need to learn more. We know we need to learn more about future technologies. Right now, it is a challenge of keeping up with the demand of taking people offline to go learn, as opposed to meeting and responding to the demand of people who have houses that need repairs today. So part of our study is going to come back with recommendations, but we are talking with CMC about alternative ways to do rapid credential training, as well as other providers. And as part of that study and that report out, the contract agreement is that for Garfield, Pitkin, and Eagle counties, we will be doing community presentations where you will hear the results of that study presented. We'll be inviting all of our stakeholders to hear what needs to change from all sides of the equation. So from the workforce themselves to the educational institutions, as well as how we might even think about some of the educational opportunities in our local schools to create more career technical education that aligns with the new energy requirements that are available, or energy certifications and diplomas that are available through Department of Education. So all of that is in process, and we will start presenting report outs probably late August and through early fall, along with some of the other studies that we have going on right now.
Thank you. That's music to my ears. We've been talking about this gap for a long time. So
it's exciting. The last bullet on this page is just to talk about the development of a program to offer zero money down whole home electrification. So we are working in partnership with Eagle County and Holy Cross. This is really something that Ryland is leading on around.
Tim, actually.
Oh, Tim's got it. Okay. Tim's leading on with Ryland support around the Blue Lake neighborhood, so in the valley, but to do a custom design program to try to do a high scale opportunity. So that is a neat one that is in development right now, and we look forward to seeing, hopefully, us be able to demonstrate scalable response to those. So the last one we want to hit on in a big way that is outside of our foundational services, you can stay if you want, is the Coal Basin highlights. So just to give you a quick update, as you know, Pitkin County has funded costs associated with the NEPA process. Where we are with Coal Basin at this point is we have a draft of the SF 299, which is our project proposal for Forest Services. We are in review of that currently. The advisory committee, the internal to CORE advisory committee, will see it this week. Thank you to Michael for being a part of that advisory committee. It will be coming out to him probably in the next 24 hours, and then we'll be talking about it at Thursday's meeting. And where we are in that process is evaluating how we want to move forward with what has been presented to you at the last update, which was the RTO, the regenerative thermal oxidizer, as well as a couple of new sort of options that we might explore. But we've also been asked to consider sort of scoping a couple of alternative options as part of our proposal to Forest Services. So we hope to be putting that proposal into Forest Services in the next 60 to 90 days. We are working on letters of support from our regional advisory group that is a little bit broader in base to include in that. And then once we submit that, we will get direction around the next phase of the NEPA process in terms of what are the additional components of that process that we will have to explore. So that's where we sit with that project right now. It is an interesting funding project, so I literally had a call an hour before now with our Department of Energy funding folks, and we keep getting reassigned project officers, so people are either going out on leave or changing jobs. So right now we're sort of in a hold pattern as of today before we will move into budget period 2 on our funding for the exploratory part of this. So that is That's sort of where Coal Basin sits. But I'm happy to answer any questions I can. Mona and Chris aren't with us today, but if you need updates on Coal Basin.
Right, thank you. Any questions, Steve? I see you're there. I think Kelly may still be with us. Francie, any questions? Just let me
I don't
know.
have any questions right now.
It's a big download. There's a lot of data to download here.
It's a lot of information. We've been busy.
Yeah, Steve, you're moving like you, okay, he has a question. Go ahead.
Well, no questions, but just comments. I still support the Coal Basin project for sure, and hope that it can keep progressing and get some things on the ground. I'm intrigued by your project in Blue Lake. I think probably getting the tradespeople there in one subdivision where they can work on multiple houses in one close area probably would be a good way that potentially new experts in being able to do the installations could be trained there. That sounds like a good opportunity for that. It looks like we need to get more technicians to be able to do the work, and so they can then spread out in different parts of the valley.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, Steve, we'll speak to this later around our multifamily study and where we're looking for opportunities to do concentrated work that will make it easier for us to partner with HOAs, but also easier for contractors to concentrate effort and hopefully increase scale and production of the efforts moving forward, because we know that part of it is workforce, part of it is travel of the workforce, and then part of it is getting a large enough group of people committed to moving some of these projects forward at a level that we can create economies of scale and efficiency in the implementation side. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. As far as benchmarking and building performance standards, just wanted to update folks. You've heard about the BIQ project. That is something we're implementing in partnership with the City of Aspen. I wanted to highlight the work of this team, and unfortunately, Jake has not joined us. But Jake and Kate have really been leading that effort to support the benchmarking standards of BIQ that the City of Aspen put in place since the beginning of the year. Of the 130 buildings, I think our 99% is 129 of them are now in compliance. This is a growing number of buildings. Next year, we will go up to 215 buildings to be benchmarked for the City of Aspen. And what we have heard in the feedback is this is one of the best compliance rates in the country for benchmarking of buildings. How we believe that has happened in our conversations with the City of Aspen and as they talk across the country about other communities that are benchmarking really has everything to do with the hand-holding that Kate and Jake do, along with support from Tim, with support from Ryland in order to do that volume of buildings by going out on site, walking people through their buildings and providing a lot of the technical guidance and assistance that many of the building operations managers or folks on site just don't know. That's not what they're there to do every day. And so in order for this process to happen, we have to put a lot of manpower behind it. Those buildings will receive their benchmarking scorecard in August, and then we will be producing our annual benchmarking report for them in September. In addition to this, Greg mentioned this earlier, that we have been focused on how can we start to generate some of our own revenue. So as a result of the relationships that CORE has built, we have contracts now with local commercial building owners in order to get guidance and advising on meeting the new state requirements. So we are being paid a fee in order to help them meet their requirements, and that has resulted in CORE establishing a formal contract for a number of services that we can offer direct to consumer, whether that is an individual household owner or a commercial building owner. So that has been a way that we've been able to advance that effort.
Can you just clarify benchmarking? I want to make sure we all understand what that means.
So benchmarking at this point is really understanding the energy use of the buildings and the sources of that energy use so that we can have a baseline to see where the opportunity for improving efficiency or opportunities for electrification are available. And then the next phase in that process will be setting standards, so performance standards that the city might want to see or the county might want to see, and CORE then supporting by providing advice and guidance on how they can get there. And some of that is driven by state requirements, so that's where we're getting some work helping some of the commercial properties say, well, we need to meet these new state requirements. Can you give us guidance on how we might best do that? And then on the larger scale with BIQ, where we have been now is working from larger buildings to smaller buildings as we go into 2025. That will include multifamily. And so as we start to get into the complications of multifamily properties, it will get even more interesting and complex. So this next one, Building Performance Hub, is one of the key areas of capacity building that you all funded and supported as part of our agreement and funding for 2024. And Dave, who has joined us, is with Sustento Group. Again, one of our Dave Hodgins is another example of where we've tried to be nimble and responsive to what the community really needs to strengthen the way we're delivering services. So Dave has his own consulting company. He can tell you all about work he's done for LA County and the funding streams and sources that he's helped them build in order to implement these strategies. Moved back into Carbondale, so moved back to the Valley and became a real asset to the CORE team and helping us guide us through the process of developing a building performance hub. So Dave has joined the team. He is supporting us in a variety of ways, but I don't know if you want to give just a quick overview of that and we can hit a couple of highlights.
Sure, well, it's nice to...
Sure your red light's on there.
Amateur hour, sorry. It's nice to be here and meet you guys. As John said, I moved back to the Valley about 2 years ago. I was here in Aspen from 2002 to 2006 and just left a piece of my heart. So I did go back to California, where I'm originally from, and have been running essentially what was an early version of a building performance hub in Los Angeles. So, you know, big market. We had, I think, 11,000 buildings covered by the policy there. I helped get that policy done. I came from a project development background, started in the nonprofit space, and then have kind of zoomed out. A lot of work on project finance, and I've been doing nothing but this since 2008. So it's been fun to come to work with the CORE team, and I think we have, they have a great vision. And so I'm working with the different team leads around thinking, how does CORE's current model scale? How does it scale? What's the way to do that cost effectively? There's a new part of this, really, I think, relative to CORE's prior work was financing, and also stacking together multiple different incentives. So there's kind of a broadening and some incremental new stuff. Incentives generally are paid on the back end of a project, and so if we want to make decarbonization and resilience accessible for more regular folks who don't have the cash to float the project all the way until the incentives come in, the financing becomes important. And so I do still have my fingers in the work in California too, so there's great exchange of ideas and also some relationships that transfer. And been, on behalf of Los Angeles, working very closely with the whole federal effort in this space as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a $27 billion allocation called the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Those awards were just made, and terms and conditions are being hammered out actually over the course of this month and next. And so I think that all of this work that CORE is doing is really positioning them well, just kind of on the theme of positioning for other funding and diversifying that.
Great. Well, great. It's great to have you back in the Valley.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
So if you recall, when we brought the Building Performance Hub before you all as part of our funding request for this year, at that point, once it was funded, there is funding support from all of the local government partners because we do see this as a regional solution. That's the part where we brought Dave into the mix, along with the Institute for Market Transformation, who are really the leaders at a national level of implementing these sort of programs. We will be the first of its kind in a rural mountain resort community and in this type of a region. So we've had to do a lot of learning along the way, and we continue to do so. But again, the core team has done a fantastic job. Ryland built out a very detailed project plan for the year, and that each component of the team has responsibility for, because it is looking at financing, it is looking at workforce, it is looking at other sources of technical assistance and guidance, all coming together as a comprehensive strategy. So as a result of the work with IMT, we've just submitted a request, or we were asked to submit a request to be a subrecipient for an additional $600,000 over the next few years to keep moving this work forward as a community. So super excited about that piece. So a couple of organizational capacity building things we want to hit on. I've already talked about them a little bit. The multifamily study, this is a regional study across Pitkin, Garfield, and Eagle County. Cindy Hubin led this effort for us. We now have a comprehensive understanding of all of the multifamily properties, including specialty properties such as those that are managed by fire departments or school divisions throughout the region. And we are in the process of collecting data from those property owners about their interest. If we were to source funding, would you take action? So there is a survey out to all of them that Jamie helped facilitate getting out. We're gathering that data back, and we will be wrapping up that multifamily study. That was part of a prize award we got last year. Based on the results of that study and the work we have done to this point, we will be submitting a year 2 prize request for an additional $200,000 to move towards implementation. So if we have strong uptake from the owners of multifamily properties across the region, then how can we help move those to action? We will be looking to use those resources to not only better capture and understand the market of multifamily properties, how many are gas, how many are electric, what are the upgrade opportunities, but also strengthening our ability to raise the dollars. We do have a contract grant writer, for example. We have the work that Dave is doing with us now with strategic financing to be able to take advantage of those things. We're looking for those resources to help support that.
Are we
yeah.
keeping Cindy Hubin on board? Is she was a contractor? Is she finished now, or are we going to try to keep her roped in?
Well, you can negotiate that with her later today. Okay. Cindy Hubin is taking the summer off, but she wrapped up phase 1 with us. We have to wait and see what phase 2 looks like, so we're sort of going to internally manage it. But our real reason for her taking this on and for us asking her her assistance with this is that a lot of the work had to go was involved with going to the building offices and getting the inventory and the connections to all of the properties that qualified as multifamily across the 3 counties. And so she had to do a lot of outreach work and then convening the stakeholders. So APSHA's at the table for this. Eagle County is at the table through the Climate Action Collaborative. We have folks from CLEAR at the table on this, representatives from Garfield County, all sort of feeding us information. So Cindy was a great neutral party to help us get the data at this point. Whether or not she comes back to do more, I think she'll tell us after she enjoys vacation time.
I have to say, John, I think retired people are the most difficult to work with. How cheeky is of her to take the summer off.
Right? But she'll be around later today. I plan to negotiate with her on a couple of things. The second one is the Green Workforce Study that I already referenced, so I won't go through that. But again, that is looking Pitkin, Garfield, Eagle County. And then the third thing on this slide of capacity building is our expanded professional expertise. So I've already mentioned Dave. We have IMT involved. So we've really been working to identify and be flexible and nimble around how can we build our capacity on behalf of the communities that we serve and make sure CORE is getting stronger, and in return, we are stronger for the communities when they need expertise and guidance. So having Dave in our pocket has been really helpful when we have questions and complications that come up. We also have hired an additional staff person. So Jamie Vogt has joined the team as our new Director of Climate Action Programs. Jamie comes to us from a background in owners rep services, lives outside of Carbondale, and has been working in the Valley for quite some time, mostly at a commercial level, so done a lot for RE1 school district design, done a lot with the hospital system in Grand Junction, as well as being involved in Lumberyard Project and a few others. So we're really pleased to add that architectural engineering expertise to our portfolio of resources. And then that has also been coupled with, Jamie has been working with a new contract team that is really focused on our brand and messaging around how we talk about our role as being the folks that make the action happen. Brittany works with a team to support the fundraising and development to help us move forward there with both grant writing as well as major donor development, so driving our events and donor engagement activities. We have one later today. I'm sure she'll let you know if we have more space. But all of that is part of what CORE is really taking advantage of, thanks to support from the community so far.
I just want to make sure we've got about 20 minutes left. Want to make sure we don't slow you down too much.
Yeah.
But just acknowledging that, keep going.
Okay. From a governance leadership evolution, this has been something we've been talking about. Many of you know about it in terms of the evolution of our board of directors. So as an organization, we are really focused on expanding our expertise and our relationships in some of the key areas as we do more work, as we grow in spaces like the Building Performance Hub and need to think about financing, contractual relationships. We're also thinking about how do we grow as a business to make sure we have the subject matter expertise on our board to guide not only that work, but also the continued active engagement that our traditional board members have brought to the table from their roles as elected officials and appointed through utility. By the end of this year, the elected official seats and the utility appointed seats will all be replaced by community volunteers. Now, those community volunteers are being vetted and sought out very carefully from the governance committee. We initially started with a list of 32 prospects. We are currently interviewing 12 candidates with a goal of about 6 seats being filled in 2025, and then we will start a regular class cycle. We're really focused on folks who can assist in guidance with fundraising and fund development, legal assistance, because as we engage in more of these relationships and we are putting more projects in place, we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by core standards, and then sort of the HR as the organization grows, those technical expertise. So those are the key areas. And of course, fundraising is a big one simply because we know all of this costs more money and we need to bring more resources to the table to hit the goals we're trying to achieve.
I want to point out, since I'm on the core board as the delegate from the county, that building the board is being driven by the board, and it's not driven by staff. Just say so. John and team are not picking the board. The current board is doing that work, and will be making those decisions. But just want to be clear, with all the expertise you're bringing to it, we still need to have that separation where we know who's developing the board. Just checking to see, I don't see any questions coming up. This is a download. This is kind of like a Manhattan Project. I've thought of it that way for a long time. Uh-oh.
May have been a little bit.
Didn't pay the bill.
Sorry.
It's fine with me either way. There we go.
I like them all.
Thank you for that. So,
Acknowledging and we're just saying.
right, yeah, we just,
know,
how much
we
did we save just
appreciate
then? But the thing is, this download you're giving us is like a fire hose of information. And to me, it's totally appropriate, because as we entered into our climate action plan after a climate action emergency, it was seen to me to be the closest thing to a Manhattan Project, a mobilization that we could possibly do. And what you're describing to us is that very thing, and what you're all working on. So you're also calm and quiet back there, but this is a climate emergency we're in the middle of, and you're launching it so deftly. So thank you for that, and keep going.
Yeah, and Greg, I do want to point out that that governance piece and that transformation is huge. And you're right, this is being driven by the board. So Tessa Schreiner, who is the sustainability manager for the city of Aspen, is our vice chair of the board, and she is the chair of the governance committee. So all of these interviews are happening with her at the lead and me being there to take notes and make sure we get them scheduled on time. But then she is presenting back the recommendations to the governance committee, who will take a slate of potential candidates forward. So it really has been a very thoughtful approach on the board's part, but also very intentional about making sure that they started off the process by doing an assessment of what are the skills and competencies that we have, what are the skills and competency gaps that we see in order to meet the strategic plan that we adopted last year, and how are we going to find those folks, including representation that is more broadly covering and expanding into Eagle County on the other side of the hill. So all of those, I think, are really important steps and call-outs. So as we look ahead to where we're going, we just wanted to give you sort of the heads up on how we're thinking about continuing to evolve and respond to the climate emergency in a very aggressive, action-oriented way. The first is that our foundational services and the demand for those are continuing to grow, and we will continue to need to expand our funding, and we are working to do that through all of the channels. So strategic financing, fee-for-service, our relationship with supporting local governments by being your action arm to the best of our ability to do so, particularly in the built environment. As we develop our 2025 budget to inform those requests, we are also looking at that mix of state and federal funding, the philanthropic grant opportunities, as well as the fee-for-service model that we referenced, and how we can continue to build that out. I'm still gonna go on record that the staff are tired of me saying, but we can't keep trying to solve this problem on a $3 million budget or a $2 million budget when we know that folks like Picken County and across the region, we have, tens of millions of dollars worth of work to be done in order to hit our goals. And so that has really been the focus of this team, and they're doing a fantastic job. So we'll continue to focus on expanding foundational services across the region, including scale and scope of our greenhouse gas reduction in the built environment, continued investment in the capacity building. So we know that this building performance hub, this first iteration, is just iteration one. We're going to learn a lot. We are learning a lot along the way, and we're going to need to continue to ramp that up. But that also includes continuing to diversify our staff competency and skill set, our board competency and skill set, and the partners that we bring around the table from a workforce perspective in order to implement these strategies. And then we'll continue to look at our fee-for-service options to meet both public and private sector partner needs. And the last point I want to make on this one is this is CORE and your 30th anniversary, right? So none of the work that CORE has done in all of the organizations that Greg has referenced and many, many more, none of it would have been done without the policy being set by the local government agencies, the REMP funding that has been made available along the way, and the partnership to help CORE evolve to where it is today and take action in a bigger way. So we hope that we can count on folks to join us. We will have our kickoff 30th anniversary celebration on August 14th at the backyard of Buttermilk from 4 to 6. At that event, we intend to launch and celebrate Bill Sterling, who will be rolling off the board after a lifelong commitment he was there from day one. So we'll be recognizing him and launching the Sterling Society as part of our philanthropic initiatives. And then in December, we'll be doing our second event at the end of the year. And at that event, we hope to really be focused on recognizing Randy Udall as the other founder and real driver to where CORE is today. And more details will be coming out about that as we get closer and the development committee defines some more goals around that. So that's what we have for you today. Want to make sure no one else joined the team?
If I could, I'd love it. Michael, if you could come back in and just talk about and if Kara's here, Maybe she left the room. Just you know, how is it working with your department and CORE? How are things going? You know, the connectivity with the county is essential, especially, and yeah, come on up, Ashley. Connectivity and synchronicity with the county is essential. You're going to be losing me as a board member at CORE. I'll be an advocate still, of course, but you're going to be the connection. And so how's that going? Putting you on the spot.
I'll take that one. I'll take his spot. I'm Ashley Pearl. I'm the Resiliency and Housing Director for the county. And Michael's part of the resiliency team. So, hi, John. I think that this year, with a lot of stability added on both sides, the county and the CORE side, things look just that stable, which is really nice. I think there's just been, on our side of the county, I've now only been here just over 2 years. Michael's been here just over a year. Before that, we had climate space living in different spaces. So really consolidating that on our part underneath the manager's office, knowing who's who and what hand's doing what is a really good space for us to be. And then I think on CORE's side, this team is amazing, really staffed up, I think, in all the right places. You have the technical expertise, the leadership expertise. I think John has been able to add some real consistency. I think on the board's part, kind of moving slowly with finding the right leadership seems to have led us to the right place. So I would say a lot still to be seen, but we're all standing on a lot more solid ground than we were a year ago, which sets us up really well for success. And just learning more about what CORE has to offer in this new version. I think we're on CORE 6.0 now or something. It used to be 2.0, but we've moved on. So excited to see what that looks like. And then I think down the road, as we build out on the county side our own climate projects, really identifying, is CORE a nonprofit that truly serves the community, and is it also an entity that provides direct services to the county in some spaces, or do we just want to support CORE as the great nonprofit entity they are? And I think as the years develop and as our projects really take shape, we'll be able to know more about our county needs. But at this point, we're happy to support them as a nonprofit, doing a lot of the good community work, as we still kind of understand what climate work means here at the county. And as a reminder, I'll put in a plug for Michael's work. We just kicked off the writing of the new climate action plan for the county. So that will be done at the end of the year, which I think will add a lot of structure and details around what it looks like for Picken County to be working on climate in a bigger, more transparent way.
Great. Thank you for that. And I assume the people from the city would be saying pretty much the same thing, in that how CORE's relationship with the city and then the other communities, I think, has really become more, the structure is forming.
Yeah, I would say this has been a big year of that structure. So like Ashley mentioned, we have monthly meetings now. Michael has been generous to give us even more time by sitting on the advisory that we've created specific to Coal Basin, so we can keep that link very close together. But I think what's also consistent is for every local government agency that is contributing to the work, we have these regularly scheduled check-ins on a consistent pattern. So just like last year when we put out sort of, this is what we want to provide in this structure, that happened across the board. Every community got the same format. Foundational services, add-on services, you'll see that stay consistent going into 2025 as we frame that up. And then, if a particular community says, hey, we need your help, or we would like help in this area, is that something CORE can deliver on? Then we can respond to that opportunity, pursue it, and we'll build that. Similar to like the way we have things with the City of Aspen with BIQ. We have foundational services for them, and then BIQ is sort of a standalone additional project. That same thing is happening with Town of Snowmass Village, specifically working with them. We're just wrapping up a study for them around 4 commercial properties that we hope will be a template or a place to establish a case study. But that was a specific, hey, could you take this on in addition to? So we're doing that work there. And then we reference Blue Lake. That is an add-on project for Eagle County outside of the funding they already provided for our traditional grants and rebate program. Basalt's looking at the same thing. And so that is how we intend to sort of continue that consistency and build out CORE's team to really understand if this is where the communities are going and we can create efficiency. When y'all formed CORE, you named it the Community Office for Resource Efficiency. So part of what we want to stay committed to as an agency is making this sustainability work, this climate action work, as efficient as possible for our communities. So not creating duplication, but really how do we leverage economies of scale where there is commonality, and then individual communities are going to have to do their own thing for their own purpose and their own goals. So yeah, it's making good progress.
My last question for the three of you would just be, it seems that we're better connected regionally than we have been. I feel like I'm teeing up. You didn't prompt me to say this, but what I'm seeing on a regional basis is a new nascent thing since that meeting we had a couple of years ago with all the various groups. I think the mountain community people initiated that, and then a regional climate solutions group has come out of that. So now it's not just our valley or the upper Roaring Fork Valley, it's expanded. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so if you look back at what we referenced, the three examples I would give right now are the Green Workforce Study. That is a 3-county commitment. We have representation from all 3 counties. The Multifamily Study, 3-county commitment. And those really anchor back to the Regional Climate Solutions Group. And each of those is sort of championed by a member. So CORE championed those 2 initiatives. The third initiative that is currently going on that your staff is involved in, Town of Snowmass Village, City of Aspen, as well as Eagle and some Garfield County communities, is a code alignment group, which is looking at building net zero for new construction projects. And so we have code officials involved in those, as well as sustainability folks involved in those conversations to create a roadmap. That will be the third sort of presentation. You guys, CORE board, will hear an update this week from Lotus, who is leading that on behalf of the region, around where we are in building out that roadmap, but we will be wrapping that up. So all of this, coupled with, again, going back to CORE specifically, the Building Performance Hub really is designed with the idea that in the built environment for the 3 counties, we will continue to try to achieve economies of scale by meeting the needs across the 3 counties from an action-oriented perspective, where the local governments can continue to advance policy and funding. We can advance the work of getting that policy in place and action on it. So it's pretty exciting.
Great. Thanks. You can take a breath. That was a download. He's good at this. Last minute questions, comments from anybody online or in the room? There's actually an awful lot here, and I'll think of more questions after you've left the room. But I really thank you for coming in, and this is kind of encouraging. I have to say that this structure is forming, and these cells around the region are forming and working together. We're also reaching out with CC4CA, so it becomes, what's that, 60? Are there 60 or is it 40 communities across the state are part of this lobbying effort? And we're all getting interconnected and starting to move in the same direction, it seems. So I'm pretty optimistic about this. So we have no choice but to be optimists about it, but this really is cause for optimism here. So thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And if anybody asks you to repeat that, I'm sure you could do it. Thursday.
See you there.
Yeah, right. You'll be doing it for us again on Thursday. Okay, thanks, and thanks, Brittany, Jamie, Tim, Ryland, and sir, I've forgotten your name already. Dave, welcome to the team. Glad you're here.
Thank you,
John.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks for
all your
coming
work.
in. I think you should let the others talk more, and just so you can take a breath. You're looking hypoxic.
I know.
Okay, thank you all. Up next is the quarterly APSHA policy discussion. Do you need to take a break? Do you need a minute? I could go get a glass of water and then we'll be right back. Back in 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Ah.
It's only going to get worse.
Yeah, as a friend of mine said. Okay, we're back with the work session on June 18th. And up next, we've got the quarterly APSHA policy discussion. Ashley is here, Matthew is here. Welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Hi.
And take it away.
I am not going to take it away. This is the second quarterly update that is actually commissioner-led. So Commissioner McNichols Curry is going to take
great.
the lead as our APSHA rep. And just as a little bit of background, we started these last quarter. And if they're beneficial to the board, we can continue them every quarter moving forward. And this is happening at the same time, or every quarter, the city of Aspen is also having a city council-led policy discussion. And then we're trying to be within like a couple weeks of the city, also having a BoCC-led APSHA policy discussion. And this is just for you all to raise APSHA policies, big picture items that you want to give direction back to your APSHA representatives, or just see if there's consensus among the BoCC. If you all feel similarly about a policy level type thing, that we want to have more of a Pitkin County presence on the APSHA board around any particular topic. So I think Kelly has a couple items she wants to put in front of you today, and Matthew and I are here for context if you need it.
Excellent,
I think
thanks.
you took it away just fine.
Okay.
Yeah, good job. Kelly, you're on.
Okay, I just want to check if you guys can hear me okay.
We
Yep.
can. Much better.
Okay, I think I'm the only one in this touchdown space, so I can go without earphones. And I will, just a couple housekeeping things. If I'm looking down a lot, the camera placement here is very high, so to look at my computer and look at the camera is a little awkward. And then I'll also just extend some apologies to colleagues, because I'm a little disorganized on this round, and so I didn't coordinate with Ashley and Matthew and John and Francie ahead of time. But I have quite a number of things discussion today, nonetheless. And so I think the way that this discussion will best be broken out is I'll do a couple of updates on some proposed regulatory changes on some of the programs that we've been engaged with. And then I'm going to move into some of the bigger policy discussions that are underway with APSHA board. And I'll look for kind of your brainstorming and feedback on those things. So just give me a second here. I want to pull up information. The first that I'm going to start off here is with proposed regulatory updates. So we had a work session, and then I think our first and second reading will be coming this summer on some updates, and I wanted to talk to you about what those are a little bit. One of them is related to changing how applicants qualify. Right now, the way that it's been operating is that applicants you qualify once a year, except that when you get new W-2s and new tax returns, then you have to re-qualify. And that creates a lot of confusion for applicants, and it creates a lot of burden for staff. And so staff has proposed streamlining that to really just have it be once a year and have your packet, persevere through that 1 year, 365-day period, which then when that clock stops ticking, you would need to provide all the updated W-2s and tax information again. This makes sense. I think I know I have received a lot of questions from people trying to apply, saying like, I was qualified as this category, and now they're telling me that I've either gone up or down, and I can't apply for the unit I wanted to apply for. So just clarification in this, I think burdensome, complicated process is really a good goal. And then I'll go through all these, and then if you guys want to give me feedback on any of them, that would be great. Another conversation we had was related to increasing the rental income qualification. up to 200% of what the category limit is. What's happening, and we did this during COVID. We approved a increase of someone's income up to 150% of what that category max is for rentals, because the workforce changed, people started getting paid more, the pressure on housing inventory is so much greater that doing that allowed people to preserve staying in their rentals, as opposed to having to move out and find a place. So the APSHA board had a lot of discussion about this and ultimately said that we did not support bumping this up to 200%. There is a bit of a grace period for folks who, if they are overqualified for their rental, can have time to find a place, or can, if something changes in their household, go back down to their category level within a year. And it's a tough situation because we're trying to balance whether people can stay in their rentals versus keeping people properly qualified and letting folks who do fill those category levels to move into places who are also constrained in this housing market. And again, we can come back to any of these. Another proposed regulation change that was discussed, it was exempting retirement accounts. And this is being responsive to criticism that APSHA is disincentivizing retirement savings because that asset is accounted for in your total asset cap for your category. And so the board agreed that we would exempt very specific retirement accounts. And the way that we're looking at that is those accounts which run into a penalty for early withdrawal. And so it wouldn't allow somebody who is like, well, I have this, investment account and this is intended for my retirement. No, that's nice you have it. We're going to still count it on your asset cap, as opposed to your traditional retirement assets. Another one is looking at a change in how APSHA has in the past considered the number of dependents. And remember, when people are looking to buy or rent, the goal is to get the number of bodies or more into the number of bedrooms that unit has. And that priority goes to households that do have that number of total dependents in their household. And in the past, they have allowed for people to provide some proof of pregnancy to count as a dependent when bidding on units. This has created issues of equity for people who are, either trying to adopt or going through fertility treatments, which aren't always promised, right, or assured. And so APSHA staff and the APSHA board agreed that, we're going to count like the number of actual live people in a household, and that aligns with how the IRS defines dependents. So those are some of the changes that we discussed, some that we agreed, some that we did not agree as a board that staff have recently proposed. And I will look to you guys to see if you have any questions on those right now.
Questions, Steve or Francie?
I am good.
Comments? Good
Any
for now?
inputs, any feedback if you think we're getting it right, or, Francie
Actually, I
and
do
I,
have a
if we're
question.
getting it right or wrong.
Francie?
Yeah, did we actually make a decision on how long they could stay in a unit for which they are overqualified? I can't remember if we decided or made a recommendation.
I'll look to Matthew. My understanding is we just deferred to what the current practice is, which is to give people that year to come into compliance
year,
or not.
okay.
Correct. Well, right now it's 12 months to come into compliance.
Great, thank you.
Right. Steve?
Yeah. Kelly, thanks for the update. You're really on top of things. I appreciate that. And I thank you and Francie for serving on the APSHA board and representing us very well, I think. You're making good progress there on all this policy, different things.
Thank you, Steve. And you know, these are tough, right? We're balancing competing values that our boards and the APSHA board has about wanting to be fair and transparent and also, efficient with how we're using the properties. So, okay, so I'll move on from that. And then the next update I want to do, and I'm going to pull up this week's packet. We're going to hear about this tomorrow, I think. Okay, so we have, us and the city of Aspen agreed to contribute $200,000, so $400,000 total for the repair grant program. And these grants are up to $10,000 for essential repairs. And we started with allowing folks who own units in category 1, 2, and 3 to apply. And then we expanded this to that next up category to category 4, who also, it had been demonstrated that there was a lot of need there and there was a lot of expense, frankly, on the market for these repairs. And so the goal is to continue maintaining our housing inventory and helping owners to do that. So far, the program has received 83 applications, of which 50 have been approved, 30 were denied, and 3 are in review. 19 of those have completed and paid for their repairs, and $141,000 of grants have been distributed. And that is out of a total of $380,000 that have been allocated. So we're almost at that $400,000 budget, which was, after that, we will not be accepting more applications because there's no more money for it at that point. The approved applications were spread out. So 20% came from category 1, 16% from category 2, 32% from category 3, and 32% came from category 4. And then the most popular repairs needed were for windows. And then plumbing issues, boiler replacement, roof repair, furnaces, hot water heater, some ADA upgrades, electrical, mold remediation, and then 1 flooring and 1 heat pump. And that's for the 50 projects. And so I will, the average grant was $7,428. And I would expect that we will have some interest in considering if we want to continue funding this program next year, and whether there should be adjustments to that. And that is some of the discussion that we'll have at tomorrow afternoon's APSHA meeting. Do you have any questions about that program update?
No, other than that, it sounds like the money is being distributed as intended, and it seems to be working, and we'll see what comes around next year, assuming there'll be the need to continue it as properties come up, need help.
Yeah.
I had a question, and I don't know who it's for. Maybe it's for Matthew or Ashley or you, Kelly, or Francie even. If a resident in APSHA has a conflict or is in violation in some way, how comfortable would they feel, or do you hope they'll feel, reaching out to try to resolve it? And who do they talk to? Who do they speak?
They
Who
do
they
have
call?
to be in full compliance to avail themselves of the Essential Repairs Grant Program.
Of the grant program. I
So-
was thinking just a
Oh.
general question. If somebody has a problem, whatever it is, who do they call and how does
I
it
mean,
work?
You mean
They-
a problem with the
Somebody in
management
APSHA has,
with a problem with APSHA.
a problem.
I mean, they can definitely call me, or if they don't want to talk directly to staff, they can talk to any member of the board. And we now have a board email address, apshaboard@aspen.gov, which goes to all the members of the board. If they don't want to talk to me or another member of staff,
So they can
or
broadcast, so they're.
or they can,
outreach is-
you guys are also part of APSHA, so they can talk to any of the county commissioners or City Council, and I'm happy to address those concerns and figure out what's going on and report back to any of you guys.
Got it. Great. Yeah, just because you do get a feeling, people are, we're talking about people's homes, right?
Right.
So if
Yeah.
if somebody gets a letter that they're in violation or there's a question about something, it just immediately raises the anxiety level. And so there ought to be a process that allows them to reach out and resolve it as best they can.
Right.
Well, and I think we have said, Greg, in the past, and we probably could do better to say it more often, is that, people are encouraged to sort of raise their concerns directly with APSHA staff, like early and often. For example, if somebody is concerned, like, oh my goodness, I don't know, my husband had to go out of state because he's taking care of his mom and, has taken a job over there for a year or something like that. Like, there's, APSHA can talk them through how to maintain their eligibility, during life situations. Like, APSHA can say, there are tools and things that people can avail themselves of. There's leaves of absence, things like that can like freeze people's sort of qualification, that they may just be afraid, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my house, or I'm going to have to lie in the future, or, I'm suddenly, my all of my 20 years of employment isn't going to be considered because I had this one gap year. APSHA, like the staff can really talk people through what their circumstances are in a way that's confidential and figure out if there's paths and tools that already exist in the program, so they're not putting themselves in a position to be in violation.
And if I could just echo what Kelly said, that's absolutely correct. And in fact, it's an obligation of being an APSHA owner. It's in the regulations to keep us updated of your situation. So, that's kind of a prescriptive way to put it, but the reality is we definitely want to work with people, and we'd rather hear about it early and hopefully work things out than, even the hearing officer process or the notice of violation process. It's cumbersome. It takes a lot of staff work, so we'd much rather work it out as early as possible.
That's great. I'm hoping that somebody from the newspapers listening today, because this is the sort of thing that does need to get out often, so people understand they have a way of taking care of this, so the fear and the anxiety doesn't build. I haven't lived in an APSHA unit now in 20 years, and I don't recall having any issues back when I did. Actually, we decided to move out as a result of thinking we were overqualified. When I got married, it changed our status, and we just thought, well, maybe it's time. So we were lucky enough to be able to back then. But I do know it's an emotional thing because these are people's homes, and often you can imagine the inhibitions about reaching out if they think they're going to, do more harm to their situation. But it sounds like you have a process. It sounds like it can be confidential, and that they'll find a friend who will try to help them within APSHA. And I think that's important. Not news, but important to have that messaging.
And I'd rather them talk to an APSHA staff than a friend who may or may not know what's actually going on.
Right.
And when I do get calls, I return them immediately, and I'm happy to chat with anybody, but I'm often not the subject matter expert on that particular thing, but I can hook them up with the member of staff.
Right. Excellent. Well, creating stable housing means working with these people.
Yeah.
So that's good to know, and I'm hoping that the community understands that. Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions from anyone else here? Kelly, thank you for that. It all sounds like you're thoughtful.
More if we,
keep going. You've got time.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. But you are getting us into a good point of where there are some thornier issues I want to bring up to discuss. I will just say I think the last thing I wanted to update on, or last two things is, the board is revisiting whether to go out for another hearing officer request for proposals. It's something we had hired two. I think we've only ever used Vic Ireland and not the second one. And just a sort of a matter of practice to see who's out there and whether we can have multiple hearing officers available for our compliance cases. And then I think I have it noted here that we will be revisiting our strategic plan in July. And Matthew, maybe you want to weigh in on that, but that was my understanding in previous months.
We're doing we're going to do a work session on the work plan for next year in July, and that's going to be board-led, because I think there was, I don't want to say criticism, but there was concern last cycle that staff was presenting it as a fait accompli to the board. So we're trying to step away from that and make sure it really reflects what the board wants to do in the coming year. And then and then part of that discussion, or the meeting afterwards, will be discussion of the strategic plan, which is due every 5 years. So that'll be 2025. And so that'll be just a discussion from the board and how they want to approach that. Do you want to freshen it up, or do you want to break it down completely and start again? So that'll be a discussion for the board, and that work will be occurring next year. It's on a 5-year cycle.
Okay, great.
I have a question, as it occurred to me, might fit in here, maybe not. I'm wondering how often other communities reach out to APSHA. APSHA's been doing this now for 40 years. Some communities are just coming online, realizing they need to get into affordable housing in the last few years. And I'm assuming APSHA gets calls and is asked to consult and share, the experience. I think APSHA has solved problems that haven't even occurred to these other communities yet. And the things that come up that only happen to a mature or seasoned affordable housing system, for instance, just the depreciation or the what do you call it? The deferred maintenance issues that might not occur to a brand new affordable housing program. And I think that APSHA could really lend a lot of valuable information to other communities everywhere that are doing this.
We work quite closely, and we talk quite closely with our colleagues in the western part of Colorado. There was a 2-day conference in Mount Princeton we went to in late April, which was very useful. But more broadly, we do get inquiries from out of state fairly often, most recently from Nags Head, North Carolina, which was looking at setting up a program. And then we've been working very closely with colleagues from Lahaina, Hawaii, who are really starting from scratch and from a pretty desperate place after the fires. There was a delegation out from Lahaina, came to Aspen in December. Cindy Christensen and Bethany Spitz have been talking to them fairly often by Zoom since then, and on her own time, but they paid for it. Cindy went actually out to Lahaina for 4 or 5 days as an expert as they were developing some of their plans. So we do talk to them fairly often, to other colleagues from around the country.
We talk about being a model, but this is one where we certainly have expertise gained over so many decades that I think would be helpful. So glad to hear that that's helping, and with Lahaina in particular, since they were in such a desperate state. Sorry to interrupt, Kelly.
No, that's I think that's great. I know Ashley and I were at a conference in the end of April, I think just on Grand Junction, and I was there as an attendee, not as a participant at all. And there was a lot of questions about how we're approaching things and how we've done it in the past, and that was all related to mobile home park preservation. And even then, there was just a lot of inquiry about how we did it, what we learned, what we would advise people.
Not quite as glamorous as Lahaina, I might say, but I'm glad you went.
No, I'm sure they have mobile home parks in Lahaina too.
Oh, no doubt. Hopefully they still do.
Yeah, I hope they still do. Okay, and so I want to move kind of into more of the discussion related stuff. I will preface this by saying I think there is a great deal of tension right now between the APSHA board and APSHA staff. This is my opinion. And, kind of my observation, starting back, even last year we did a strategic planning retreat, and there was elements raised there about how the board and staff function together, and some staff frustration about how the board, rejects some of the staff requests or recommendations on policy items. And some of this has come to a head in the last month. And I'll talk a little bit about it. There was an article in the paper about this, and I did kind of bring it up a little bit in open discussion, but I'm bringing it up again now because it is inspiring requests to relook at the IGA and analyze how the IGA is working or not working, or elements of it that are working well and elements of it that may benefit from some editing. So that's where I'll start on this. And there, you know, I will say this was not like an effort where all of the APSHA board got together and said, we need to like address all of these frustrations with APSHA staff or anything like that. It's come out very piecemeal and I think very individually. So some individual frustrations from some individual board members. Our chair, Carson, you know, has sort of led this and led expressing some of these tensions in open discussion. And one of those, you know, some of this was little stuff, I think, just related to the board, APSHA board having requests that we weren't being fulfilled quickly or were being fulfilled, you know, or maybe just differences of interpretation. So, you know, the email, we're glad to have an email. I think folks were frustrated that that didn't happen faster. We have a complaint form that was having issues for like many months, and so individuals were not able to submit compliance complaints. And so that's kind of the, like, you know, your neighbor is renting your place out as a short-term rental and you want to submit that complaint anonymously. That form wasn't working, and it took quite a long time for that to get fixed. And then some requests for, you know, a comprehensive communications plan. We were making progress on that, and then some of that progress has stalled. And then specifically, Carson really honed in on a compliance case. And I don't have all the details of the case, but in summary, that a person had rented out a portion of their unit to someone who was not qualified through APSHA, and overcharged them in rent. So you may or may not know, like, if I want to sublet one of my bedrooms in my APSHA unit, I have to go to APSHA with that person. You know, that person needs to apply and get qualified. And then as the landlord to that person, I'm capped at how much I can rent to them. And, you know, that's because I'm capped at how much I paid for that unit. And so it's acknowledging that subsidy. And so there's this case where this person was not doing that. And I noticed a case was open, a compliance case, an enforcement case was open. The APSHA staff was working through and reached a resolution where those activities ceased, but money was never refunded to the person who had been overcharged, and a fine had never been levied to the violating APSHA unit owner. And and so this raised frustration from Carson about, you know, questions about why was this, you know, why was a fine never issued against this person who clearly violated APSHA's rules. And as you may remember, APSHA adopted a fine schedule several years ago, which was a real improvement in the compliance program, because in the past it was sort of like an all or nothing gig. Like, you know, APSHA would enforce against a person and either they came into compliance or we went to court to get them evicted. You know, there was no sort of grading of how bad, you know, the violations were comparatively, and no sort of stick to bring someone back into compliance besides just kicking them out. And so it's been a real improvement to have a schedule where, you know, you have lower level violations, have a lower level consequence and lower level fine. And if you know, again, if you don't come into compliance after a certain period of time, then that goes up to the next level of fine and becomes an increasingly worse consequence. And so that's how it's set up. And then in the case of this compliance case, there's questions about differences of interpretation from the staff and the board, or Carson. I don't even want to present necessarily a board position because I don't think we've articulated one yet, but about how staff should be interpreting and applying the notice of violation fine schedule. So that's sort of an issue I wanted to bring up with you all. That's one thing, and then from that has grown additional concern about what is the APSHA board's ability to direct staff and to give input on staff, both generally and kind of a performance management way of looking at things, and sort of specifically on compliance and how we expect compliance to get handled. So I'm bringing this up because we have an IGA discussion scheduled for tomorrow at the APSHA board. The APSHA board has been provided with kind of the history of APSHA IGAs and the current formulation of the IGA, how that all relates to the housing authority laws of the state of Colorado. It's sort of unclear at this point what elements of that we're going to discuss. And so I wanted to have a check-in with all of you if there's sort of particular elements of this to discuss. I will say some things that have I've been thinking about, I guess, is the tension related to, how in compliance specifically, the board is able to give direction to staff. So, the way that this works is that there's someone does a violation, APSHA finds out about it, enforcement staff decides whether to open a notice of violation and research that violation. Inform the APSHA person, the owner or tenant, what they've done and how to come back into compliance, and then kind of follow up to see if that compliance has been met or not. There is confusion, I think, about whether the APSHA board can give information to APSHA staff at any point along that line, or whether APSHA staff can issue the fine when they have evidence that the violation has taken place, or whether that has to go to the hearing officer to determine that or not. And then if the hearing officer, decides that the violation has occurred, whether the hearing officer can implement the fine or not. Now the way that we're structured is that an appeal from the hearing officer comes to the APSHA board. So it essentially kind of renders our ability to give direction to staff on specific cases. It sort of precludes that, right? Like we can't tell, like APSHA staff can't come to us like similarly to like in a lawsuit where we're party to and say, hey, how do you want us to handle this? How do you want us to represent you and your rules or your codes or whatever? Because ultimately that could come back to us. So I don't know, hopefully I'm describing a little bit how messy this can be. And if anyone has thoughts or ideas about how our board might suggest to APSHA how to kind of clean this up, or figure out different ways, I think that could be a productive space for the APSHA board and APSHA staff to kind of figure out, is there a way that we can provide better information to the APSHA board about our expectations related to the pursuit of compliance cases. So I'll start with that big one there, and I don't, Matthew, if you think I've misrepresented anything here, please, that's not my goal, so please correct now.
So not tomorrow, but the meeting after that, we are going to have dedicated time at the APSHA board meeting to discuss compliance, and staff is going to explain what the rules as written and how we've been interpreting them, and if the board doesn't like that, we can have a discussion on how to improve that. So we're just going to be and we have been doing more compliance cases, I think it's fair to say, than ever before, with the hiring of Jackie last year, including audits. So, there is a tension there because we have been doing more compliance than before. We've been getting people into compliance, I think, more than ever before. We have the statistics on that. And then the question for the board is, do they like the way we've been doing it, or do they want more exercise of the fine schedule? And we're happy to have that discussion, and we'll explain what we've been doing, and we'll talk about it.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. And I will note this one case that I think that I've described. The city is conducting an audit of that case and should have those findings, like how that case was handled. We'll have those findings for our discussion as well. So let me just check in on that on those questions that Matthew just summarized. If you all have any thoughts of those now, if you want to brainstorm about what you think. Our direction, Christy, my direction, we can come back to that after you've had some time to reflect on it, but that will be an important thing for us to understand how this board feels.
If I could, it sounds like you're freezing up a little bit there. Steve, I'm going to go to you next. My first question was just that it sounds like some of these are issues that APSHA board and staff, I'm hoping, Matthew, or you kind of knew what Kelly was going to be bringing to you today. I'm just wondering why our board is being asked to weigh in on some of these things, which seem like communication or not even policy issues that would come to us. So I'm a little just wondering about why this is the forum to have this conversation. When it comes to policy for our board, I do understand, but I'm not certain that everything I heard really involved or should involve this board yet, so I'll need some clarification on that. And I'll go to Steve next.
Can I speak to that for a second, Kelly?
Or sure, I'll let Steve, wait a minute, I'll let Francie answer.
Thank you. Well, I think one of the things is that the APTA board wants to feel that it is empowered to do what it's asked to do. And Pitkin County is part of that board. In addition, Pitkin County is half of APTA financially and ownership-wise. And so the compliance issues have almost bypassed Pitkin County. So I would say that's one of the reasons that Kelly would like some feedback from our board, from Pitkin County. Would you agree with that, Kelly?
Yes.
So just it really is policy related rather than particular board staff interaction related.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like a simple way to say it is, do we expect that if someone's found to violate, they're going to pay that fine?
Right.
Or do we think that that's not necessary? They've come back into compliance. We can move on. So, and those are, that gets to sort of the question of how strongly do we feel about the adherence to compliance? How strongly of a message do we wish to send to the people in the system about this, versus kind of a more sympathetic, and compliant approach, if you know what I mean.
Got it.
I'm not finding good words on this.
Right.
But like, that would be that would be a question that I think this board should tell me. How do you want me to take that message forward to the APSHA board as a whole?
Right. It seems that there's more scrutiny now. You've got more oversight of violations. So there's more scrutiny, which means we're going to find more violations, which might appear to the community of APSHA residents that there's a crackdown or more stringent rules where perhaps they weren't followed so closely before or maybe overlooked. So I think that's something we ought to talk about, because it does seem like all of a sudden we're finally doing what we said we were going to do all along, but it's still a shock, right? I'd love to hear what other people think. Steve?
So I think that if people feel that they're being treated fairly and evenly, that everybody's being treated the same is important. I also think that there really needs to be a good appeal process, which maybe there already is, but there are circumstances in people's lives that can be really difficult to deal with, and some amount of compassion needs to come into play at some point in some instances. And so I think it would be important to have that sort of a sympathy and compassion element somewhere in the process, and maybe that's during an appeal process. I think that would be an essential part of where we want to go. But I am glad that that APSHA is cracking down and bringing people into compliance, because there were way too many instances of people abusing the system and breaking the rules, trying to make extra money off their units and doing it improperly and all of that. That the public sees that and thinks everything's out of control. So having the crackdown is a good thing, but then having good rules in place for how to resolve the violations is important too. And maybe APSHA is already pretty much there, but that's my feelings how we should do this philosophically.
Thanks, Steve. I agree with that. I think certainly having a compassionate approach where it's appropriate, but then also making sure everyone understands the rules and they're applied fairly. I'm wondering if, and I always seem to come out in advocacy for an ombudsman of some sort who understands the process and the vernacular and the intricacies and can advocate for an applicant who needs help. And I don't know if that exists at APSHA, but maybe that's something that could happen, because you certainly have the cases where people are just flat out in violation and that just needs to be corrected. And then there are other cases where there are gray areas or circumstances that, beyond their control, whatever, where they're afraid and they don't understand the system. Is there someone there who can advocate for them, so they feel like they're getting a fair hearing and a fair shake, and they're not missing an opportunity if there's a loophole or a standard of qualification that they might meet that they don't know about. So I just wanted to throw that in. Francie, do you have anything you want to add on that?
No, I'm looking forward to tomorrow's meeting.
You'll be digging it
you know,
again.
Greg, I love that suggestion, and I think that's a great lead into sort of just the last thing I wanted to maybe just throw that out into the brainstorm with the board.
Hey, Kelly, you're freezing up on us. I don't know if you can hear us.
You know,
but
that
we
might
can't.
be.
Turn off your video. There you go. Want to keep trying?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I am on Pickens County Wi-Fi. Can you hear me okay?
We can now. Give us that last paragraph.
Okay, sorry. I think that was a great suggestion. I would love to throw that out to the APSHA board to sort of chew on a little bit. And this leads me to sort of the last point, is this conflict between how the APSHA board can provide direction to staff about whether staff is appropriately using their discretion on policy matters or not, has raised some question about whether there's cracks in the IGA. So right now, the city of Aspen manages APSHA. So they manage Matthew, they manage APSHA staff. The board as a whole has oversight over kind of the policy decisions and regulations and hearings, compliance hearings, but not over direct feedback to how APSHA as an organization is running. And I think that this conversation has caused some question about, well, do we need to revisit the IGA so we can have more direct oversight and management of how APSHA is running and making decisions and implementing the program? Now, I will say, when we brought that up at the last meeting, Sarah Ott kind of pitched it back to the APSHA board and said, hey, listen, you guys are supposed to review the IGA every 5 years, and you come back to us and you tell us if you have any suggestions for how it needs to be changed and strengthened. So that, I think, is what we're going to be talking about a bit tomorrow. And I wanted to check in with you all to see if there's things that have stood out to you, if there's opportunities to find cracks or see cracks or close cracks in how it's structured currently, formally through the IGA.
Thank you. I haven't read the IGA. At least if I've looked at it, it's been a long time.
I actually have a copy in my bag if you
You can drop it off.
yeah. On the APSHA website.
Right, right.
Yeah, so again, this is where I think, I mean, these are not new conversations necessarily, right, about APSHA's authority as a housing authority, in statute versus how we've structured it through the IGA versus our delegation of responsibilities to the city of Aspen, that Picken County does not possess. And are these kind of, is this tension that the staff and the board having really related to the IGA structure, or is it just more, we need better clarification of how we all work together and provide clarification to each other? I think is sort of the big question that the APSHA board is going to have to first decide.
So is this something that's planned for a future APSHA meeting at a retreat or something? It just seems like there's some internal board, staff, city conversation that needs to happen, and I guess the county would be part of that as well. But since we're not the direct managers of staff, it sounds like this ought to be APSHA board and hashing this out amongst themselves to begin with check-ins with their supervising elected officials. Does that make sense, John? I'm looking at you because you do these things.
So I think the basic problem is that the IGA, there are only two parties to the IGA, and that's Picken County and the city of Aspen. And because Picken County and the city of Aspen reached agreement through the IGA, it created a housing authority, which is APSHA. And then the IGA lays out the governance. Just kind of listening to the dialogue, some things that maybe you all might want to think about in having this discussion and giving Kelly and Francie feedback is when the current IGA was developed, what was clearly contemplated was more of a policy or legislative role for the APSHA board, with the executive and administrative function being performed by the city as the fiscal agent. And that would be the implementation side. And so I think when it comes to these conflicts or differences between expectations, between the policies that have been adopted and implementation. I think the conversation that Matthew's laid out is the right first start, which is, okay, where are those conflicts, and let's talk about that and have some values, right? Because when you're in an enforcement profile, you're usually trying to accomplish one of two things. You're either seeking compliance or you're seeking punishment. You're seeking justice in that regard. And compliance can be a really different path. It's the same goal for everyone, but it can be really different paths to get there, depending on how recalcitrant that your other party is. If the goal is to, consistently apply available punishments like the fines and such, that's a really different goal, right, of the enforcement process. And it sounds like there may not be clarity on that. And so the conversation, I expect that's probably what you're looking to accomplish with the conversation, is a really good first start. The other thing that I'd caution is, as a policy or legislative body, seeking consistency. You all talked about consistency as being important. Seeking consistency on individual enforcement items outside of setting those kind of generalized goals, philosophies of enforcement, and that sort of thing, it can be really, really difficult on a case-by-case basis, if that makes sense. And so that's a really challenging role for the board to take on outside of that policy level. And so it's something that I would consider very closely before contemplating changing the roles of the APSHA board or the roles of the city or what have you. It does sound like maybe there's some conversation that needs to continue between the APSHA board and the city as the fiscal agent about what are our lines of communication to raise concerns, so that the fiscal agent, who's responsible for that administrative function, the executive function, can respond one way or another. That response could be saying, well, that's not, here's why this doesn't work that way, or it could be, that's correct, we need to sit down and have a conversation on the executive side about how to solve whatever the issue is. I don't know how those communications are taking place. I do plan to attend the APSHA meeting tomorrow, just since the IGA is coming up, and as part of that discussion. But I do think it's legitimate for you all to kind of weigh in on that overall governance piece, overall philosophy. What do you think the philosophy should be when it comes to enforcing the APSHA rules?
Let me ask you a question about that, because I agree that consistency from case to case is practically impossible because there's so much variation. But in philosophy, might there also be variation between always going for compliance or going for consequences and fees or whatever? I mean, couldn't that also fluctuate depending on the situation?
Well, so it's kind of a justice versus mercy dilemma, right? Where when you err on the side of justice, you're treating everyone similarly to the letter of the law, regardless of what those circumstances that may have, been, affected compliance, or regardless of somebody's willingness to comply or knowledge. Versus, I think what you're asking is, if the philosophy is, hey, we want to bring people into compliance and we want to provide some discretion to consider all these mitigating circumstances that you couldn't possibly contemplate when a rule is being developed, then that's a little bit more on the mercy side. And I think that's kind of a discussion about how you want staff to approach enforcement of the rules and what the philosophy is. But if there's not a common understanding of that, you're never going to be in agreement. There's going to be expectations that aren't met.
Well, I suppose if the board wanted to go more with the mercy side of things, and the goal being, oh, thank you, the goal being to get people into compliance, that's the primary goal, and, negative consequences notwithstanding, that's the goal. Then if we chose that, if we decided to make a choice about which philosophical approach we wanted, and we chose that, then we could still have cases where not only do you have to go into compliance, you need to pay these fees, or you need to sell your house, or so it doesn't prohibit the more punishments type of approach.
Not at all. What it would indicate is that there's an escalation based on somebody's willingness or lack thereof to come into compliance.
Yeah, okay.
I'm reminded
And
of
I would say, I think that that's how staff's discretion has been applied. That's my belief anyways. That's exactly what Francie said, is how staff's discretion is showing up in the compliance program. I would just say that, and I'll just point out one last thing that's going to come up is just, say staff was not fining anybody, or not, just let it not enforcing on anybody, or not collecting fines on any egregious violation. The APSHA board doesn't have any role in making that, in directing APSHA staff to make that happen. So there's just also that separation between what the APSHA board can do to get policies actually implemented on the ground. Like, we don't have that, that's up to the city. That would be up to Sarah Ott to say, Matthew, you're not doing this right, you need to do it right. So I think that's part of some of the frustration in some of the board members too, is just that separation between our ability to say, these are our expectations, and we expect the staff to follow them. That's how it shows up in the work plan and in the strategic plan, but on like a day-to-day, effort, there is that distance that I think some board members find frustration with.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say that I'm just reminded about the frustrations sometimes we feel when we think the speed limits are being violated on the highway or other rules, and it always comes down to the ability to enforce. We'd really like people to turn off their lights at night, and we have dark sky rules, but we really don't have much of a mechanism to enforce on that, and that becomes frustrating. It seems we appear incompetent or just unable to enforce our own rules. So it inhibits us from wanting to make new ones if we can't even enforce on the ones we have. So we have these similar sort of problems.
And we depend on neighbors to turn people in, and that's the same with APSHA.
Well, maybe that's the same thing with APSHA. So I think I'm gratified to hear that the staff has been, if erring on the side of working toward compliance and forgiveness to some extent, but then there's a limit to that. If somebody's just egregious, if somebody's running a hotel when they're clearly in violation, I don't have a lot of sympathy for that, and I don't think any other APSHA residents would either. If it's somebody who has a work situation that's changed, or a financial situation post-COVID or something like that where they're trying to keep it all together, that seems a little bit different than if they had to go leave town to work, as somebody suggested. That seems a little different than renting your house out to ski tourists or something. And so it seems to me that where does the discretion come down? Where does the compassion come in? And when does the enforcement begin, when it's obvious that that's the final stage? And so maybe is it a 3 strikes and we come down hard, or is there a forgiveness for the first, and then to show active intent to comply? Is that part of it? And I assume that's already in the APSHA structure. So maybe it's just a communications issue with, if the board doesn't feel they have any say, is what I'm kind of hearing. What do we do?
And a legitimate response of the board is to, recommend policy changes, shalls versus mays or what have you, that would drive that consistency and send a clearer message. But I think the first step is, the less formal step of, how do we create some shared expectations with the conversation? And then if the board feels like they need more, the legislative role is to change the policy and tighten that up. And that would be an appropriate, I think, response versus trying to get into the administration and changing the IGA. There were a lot of reasons that did not happen last time that the IGA was revised. And I'm not sure those reasons have changed in any meaningful way. So that would be up to you all, of course.
You're talking about the APSHA board versus our it doesn't come to our board yet. It's really APSHA board needs to start this and begin a process.
Yeah. And Kelly, I hope I'm on the right track for the
Yeah,
conversation.
no, you are. You've done a better job summarizing this, so thank you. And we can wrap this up, but I did want to bring all of this up because it's gotten, instead of just being focused on sort of the how do we manage expectations better together, it's become, are there cracks in our fundamental organizational documents that we need to address? And that really implicates this board. And so I wanted to flag why that conversation is happening, and in case there are recommendations that say come back to the BoCC to say we think you need to change the IGA this way, you weren't all taken off guard.
Right.
Matthew
Thank
wanted
you.
to say something.
Oh, Matthew, yeah, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, in my 2.5 years in this job, this is the first time we've had some real friction, and I hope we can work through it. So, that's pretty good. So, I hope we can. I'm going to hopefully explain to the board what we're doing. If they don't like what we're doing, either informally, just by guidance, we're happy to relook at it. And if that doesn't work, we're happy to look, as John said, look at some legislative changes. So, not this meeting, but the one after that, I'm just going to explain how we've been interpreting the rules, the number of cases we've been doing, and have the discussion. So we're happy to do that.
Right. Thank you.
Kelly, I just have to say that I can't believe you apologized, but not for not preparing for this. I would say you did a slightly above average job bringing that stuff
As
forward.
she always does.
And I have one more.
Thank you.
If we have time, I have just one more thing for you guys, and that's the outreach coordinator, which you guys funded last year's budget cycle. We have someone on board. They're going to be working on outreach to the community, with particular emphasis on HOAs, looking at long-term sustainability of the program. So I just wanted to let you know, thank you very much for that. And Meg's on board, and we're hoping to do some great things with her. Thanks.
Great.
Can I ask one more question? And this is about what is how does the community in affordable housing here consider their fortune and that they're in the housing? It seems that, of course, there's an incredibly difficult process and a matter of really great fortune and luck to be able to get into the process, to get into the housing. And then once they're in, it seems as if, if something changes or if there's scrutiny, you hear a lot of, or I hear complaints that, hey, this is unfair. You think, well, what was the agreement you made when you first got into the housing? Is that something people, is that part of
that's
the yearly conversation?
part of the conversation. When somebody buys it, they have to sign saying something that they understand everything. And for ownership, there's only really three things. There's keep working full-time in Pitkin County. There's exceptions for, as Francie said, for leaves of absences or retirement, but work in Pitkin County, live in your house, don't sublet it, and don't own another property in the Roaring Fork Valley. Yeah, and there aren't even financial restrictions once you own it. We do take a snapshot when you buy, and after that, if you win the lottery, we'd prefer if you sold, but there's nothing to force you. And at the same time, on the rental side, we look at you every 2 years, and it's the same 3 main criteria. That gets a little difficult because people actually have to prove they're working full time every 2 years, which you could argue is onerous. But I don't think it's that complicated.
Right. It's not that complicated.
I don't think it's that complicated.
So then there's the sense of onerousness versus the sense of, I'll use the word entitlement for lack of a better word, but you know, what do you think you have once you're in?
We do have people who find it onerous, or they find it objectionable or even insulting that we ask them to provide these documents, and we ask them to actually fulfill their responsibilities, and we do get that. There is a small subset, people really don't like it, and we should be providing them with a service, almost no questions asked, and there's some friction there.
Right, thank you. I was wondering if, because I would assume I'd feel that way. I'm a belligerent at times if somebody's stepping on my toes. But I'm just wondering if the agreement is front and center. Back in the Napoleonic era, the naval captains would read the rules every Sunday morning, so the crew, the surly crew on the boats would remember what the rules were. And I'm wondering, how often do we do that?
Yeah, we probably could do it more. I mean, there is language in our strategic plan that talks about like a social contract, right? Like it envisions people in the inventory and the APSHA, organization as partners, right? Like we each have responsibilities and obligations and benefits to each other. I don't think, I don't think that is quite upfront in everybody's mind all the time. But that is how we sort of have honored that in our guiding documents.
Well, thank you, Kelly. I think that's really important. And I think back in the Napoleonic era, it was called the Articles of War. They'd read them to you every Sunday.
Hopefully, we don't have articles
on the
war.
foredeck.
I'll give you a bullhorn and you can come drive through Burlingame. It'd be really fun.
Yeah, thanks. I don't think that's the job I want. Thanks for this conversation. Is there anything else you want to add? And we're going to wrap it up. Right on time.
I will add that.
Ashley.
Yeah, I'll add that we are trying to schedule these quarterly. So the next one will land right before budget presentations really happen, which will be good because APSHA is always part of the county's budget allocation for the future year. And I imagine we'll have some direction then on the maintenance program as well and the county's allocation. So we'll try and schedule Matthew here again with Kelly leading in the fall, and then maybe one more time before the end of the year or early next year.
Great.
And if the board wants to change these up, Kelly's your contact, and otherwise we'll keep scheduling them.
This is really helpful for me. Thank you. I've been grateful to be able to let Francie and Kelly do the heavy lifting on this, and I still am. Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe my next one will be a celebration of all that we, sort of like what Cora did today. We can celebrate all the many things we've accomplished as well, because there has been a lot.
Well, how old is APSHA at this point? What decade are we in? Is this the fourth?
In the fifth.
Fifth.
Yeah.
So whenever the 50th or the 60th comes up, we need to have a bash.
The actual birthday is a little unclear how.
I think it started off actually as Picking County.
Yeah, I think it was,
Housing, which is still on the books, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should be celebrating all of the people that have managed to make a living here and have a career and a life in Aspen and the community and county as a result. Okay, thanks. Thanks for coming in. We'll see you in a quarter.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kelly,
Matthew.
for spearheading that.
You okay with a little break?
Yeah, we could take a 5-minute break. Is 5 enough? Okay, we're back. It's Tuesday, the 18th, and it is 3:20 p.m. We just had conversations with CORE on their mid-year update and a quarterly update from APSHA, which was really informative. Thank you, everyone. Up next is the review of future agenda calendars. John, I'm throwing it to you.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Just have a few items for you. First, just a reminder that county offices are closed tomorrow for Juneteenth. The lobby of this building will remain open for early voting, and there will be the APSHA meeting, of course, tomorrow, which will also be here. We are proposing to move the employee picnic to August 21st, still at the airport. Just wanted to check and see on board availability. Yep, we're going to do it at the AOC. Yep.
Wow, interesting. I'll check my calendar right now. I'm not sure if I'll be back then. We might be going to, my wife has a client in Chile.
Oh, boy.
We may be going down there for a week of skiing,
Wow.
which would really be fun.
August 22nd?
21st.
That's July.
I think I come back the 22nd, so I'm going to miss it.
Okay.
But you should have it anyway, because I'm not 100% sure if I'll be gone.
Yeah, the week after that is cast in Durango. I assume Levi's going?
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying August 21st?
That's correct. Yeah, August 21st.
I'm good for them.
Okay. Then I wanted to note that we're going to look to close this building and the library from 11:30 to 1:30 so that all employees would have an opportunity to attend.
This is on the 21st of August. Yeah, okay. On our calendars yet?
It is not. We wanted to kind of check availability before setting the date. I know there was some consternation about competition with other events, but it sounds like we have other individual kind of considerations going on, but not necessarily.
Looks good to me.
Okay. Stephen Francie, you'll be interviewing Basalt Library, Pickens County applicants Wednesday, June 19th. Just a reminder on that.
Tomorrow at 11 o'clock.
Is that the 19th? Oh, God, tomorrow.
That's tomorrow.
I cannot believe that that's tomorrow already. Just a wanted to remind you with the holiday.
Yes, after yet another wolf and livestock interview that morning.
And just wanted to let the board know that we did have an orientation with our high school interns, and we're going to have them attend your work session on June 27th for an introduction.
Great.
That's all I have for you.
All right, thank you. Well, that was easy. Moving right along, we can go right into board membership reports. Patty would probably, if she was here, Patty would probably talk about how much fun she had at Food and Wine.
Sorry, can I just make a request? If we can keep the June 27th meeting ending at 4, that would be really a big help because I have to get down to Carbondale for a meeting at 5 for the Wild and Scenic Committee.
Great, thanks for that suggestion. I think might even try to cut out even half an hour earlier if we can. So that's, yeah, let's not add anything new to that agenda. We want to try to cut it short for reasons we can just explain as we move closer. Thanks, Kelly. All right, yeah, I would say that Food and Wine seemed to go really well this year. I know Patty had the opportunity to go to some. I went to a couple of dinners, and it seemed like everyone was having a good time. I saw a letter to the paper today on that topic from a gentleman who suggested that Food and Wine adopt electric vehicles as their vehicles of the event, and I thought that was a great letter.
Adopt what?
Electric vehicles, because they had some big giant gas hog vehicles as their sponsor cars.
Well, I have to say that at the luncheon that I went to, as I was leaving, a couple of people at the luncheon said to me, "You're so adorable."
Wow, how nice is
It's
that?
like, well, that's what children and calves are. I didn't say that, but I wanted to. It's like,
you didn't
I mean,
respond to them and say,
who do you think you are telling me I'm adorable?
You could have gone with the Winston Churchill response would have been, "Sir, you are drunk."
Indeed they were.
And they were after the Food and Wine.
The amount of wine was shocking.
Yeah, it's amazing that people can do that at altitude.
Or would want to.
Would want to, yes, exactly. After 4 or 5 hours at one of these meals, I was ready to go home.
Yeah.
We actually had an 11-course meal, and honestly, that was a marathon.
Oh, God.
And yeah, after the first 3 hours, I was satiated and ready to go. Francie, do you want to give your report since I can't fill in for Patty any longer?
I am meeting with the BLM next week. Yes, on Monday, to talk about the early biking on the Crown, which was not recommended by CPW. So I'm going to have that conversation with the new person. I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman. The name is Erin, E-R-I-N, so I think that's a woman. She's temporary because Larry Sandoval moved to a job in Wyoming or something with the BLM. But anyway, so that's Monday, and other than that, I don't have anything.
You know, it's. Go ahead.
If you have a few extra minutes with BLM, would you summarize for them the Wild and Scenic work?
Yeah.
I had reached out. I had tried for the last 3 years to see if they wanted to send anybody, and just never got any replies or anything. So maybe this new person will be more interested in what we're doing.
Okay. Well, Larry was actually really a great guy, super nice to work with, but I don't know why that was. But yes, I will.
You know, on that same topic, I was just thinking when we're talking about all these issues we have in the high country, a lot of which is BLM land, I would assume. If we're talking about melting permafrost everywhere, is that even on BLM's radar? Do they?
Well, a lot of things are on their radar. You know, we hardly have any BLM in Picken. We have the Crown and one other little place. But they have a lot of stuff on their radar. Mostly Ellen has been covering the meetings about the wildlife migration corridors and stuff, but they seem like they're pretty on top of things. But I'll talk about that with her also.
Great. And I was just thinking back in March, I never spoke to the local BLM afterwards, but I testified on behalf of the BLM's process, public hearings process back in March. And I know it didn't pass the House, but the Senate got it through, or maintained, one, the Antiquities Act, and then two, the Western Colorado BLM office process for those offices for public hearings and input.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that that's something that they appreciate. Just want to, I can send you info on it, but.
Yeah, and you should have gotten today a letter from Anne about publishing our names in the BLM. Thank you.
right.
The thank you letter about writing to the BLM.
Got it, right, yeah. And that's it, by default, they will unless we say don't.
Yeah.
So we're good. Anything else?
No, nothing more from me.
Okay, Kelly, I'm throwing it to you. What's new at APSHA?
I think we covered that. Thank you for the time. And I'm just going to sort of clump together all the sort of state legislative stuff. Again, I will remind, I think this board should think a bit about if we have legislative priorities that we want to propose through CCI, and perhaps, I don't know, I'm going to look to John and see if that's something that we think we should schedule a little work session time on in July, perhaps, and we can connect with Levi and see if he's hearing things from, or ask him to ask departments if they have things.
Yeah, we can
So
definitely
yeah, I'll
do that.
say that. Sorry, John, were you gonna?
Sorry, I interrupted and then I took a bite of a chocolate bar. But I said, yes, we could do that.
Sound like one of my kids.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, all good. And then there is some interim committee work happening at CCAT about trying to figure out what those policy committees want to prioritize for the fall. The two committees of interest to me that I've agreed to sort of spend some time working on is related to short-term rentals and also county fiscal policies. And so the fiscal policies is related to brainstorming around additional revenue generating tools and trying to identify, which of those might seem really appealing and whether we can do some data collection around what the potential for that is for county fundraising in ways that I think are more cultivated than really the only two tools that we have now, which is sort of sales and property tax. So that is some of the work that I'm gonna do. And then related to short-term rentals, I wanted to look to Greg and kind of talk a little bit about this because we think that the bill that we fought off at the end of session is likely to come back. Related to backcountry huts. And this has opened a little bit of a broader conversation about, how does this relate to like hip camp and, other kind of uses for short-term rentals around the state. And I wanted to see if this was appealing at all to invite Judy Amabile up here and perhaps do a tour and understand kind of our regulatory approach to it. And I guess I'll throw that out there as an idea. And then Greg, I would kind of look to you to manage that offer, given your personal relationship with her.
Got it, yeah. I would certainly welcome that, and I'd be happy to do it as long, I think we need to have our conversations beforehand, because I'm not sure I understand all the complexities of it. I really appreciate the original intent, and I told her that. The intent of the original bill was appealing on one level because it kind of reminded me of the good old days when you could go to Colorado and rent a cabin in the mountains and have an experience, and that's really appealing. But with the advent of the ease with which you can do short-term rentals and the regularity, the frequency, it just seems like it's an overwhelm on the system. So I haven't resolved that in my own head yet. How do we make it work so people can still have the mountain experience without it being at such a great cost to the community that that the area is located in, or the cabins are located in? And I'd love to have a conversation with all of you about that because I don't understand it yet. But just looking at the historical context, I think that's where it came from. It was driven by a guy over in Gunnison County who wanted to rent his cabin, but it struck a nerve with me. It's like, yeah, I can understand what they're trying to do, but it's almost like it's much too easy to do it now and the cost is too high. So is there a way we can thread a needle? So that's a conversation I'd love to have. And yes, I would happily reach out to her and bring her up here if we can. Any thoughts on that? On where, yeah, you and I can talk about it offline and then
Yeah,
bring
it'd be
something
good to
back.
figure out what the goals are for such a visit. I was thinking in terms of what our advocacy was and what our response was related to being prepared to pass an emergency ordinance, changing land use code. So that was the context within which I was thinking would be meaningful, you know, because I continue to sort of say, like, you know, giving the counties the authority to license flexibly lets us address the concerns that you raised. Whereas if we get those tools taken away from us, then land use is like a blunt instrument, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you and I can talk offline a little bit more about that and then revisit it with the board as necessary.
Great. Thank you. I think that's really important, and thanks for bringing it up.
Yep.
More from you?
Let me think. I'm trying to think about I don't have my notes on the Basin Roundtable, so I'll have to hunt on that one.
Steve, do you want to dive in?
So let's see, a couple of things on Club 20. The summer policy committee meetings are coming up July 11th and 12th at CMC in Edwards. And the committees, I'm going to try to go, well, I will be able to at least zoom in, but I'm going to try to go at least one day. But that's the telecommunications, healthcare, education. The second day, transportation and tourism. Then on July 25th and 26th in Nucla, which I wish I could go visit Nucla, but I think I'm going to be in Alaska right then. And that will be the energy, water, business affairs, public lands and natural resources and agriculture. And that's the one I would really like to be there, but I won't be able to. I would think if someone wanted to attend that one in Nucla, especially, Francie, you might be interested in
When is it,
looking into
Steve?
that. So that's July 25th and 26th. So the summer
In
policy
Nucla.
meetings are.
Did you say
Yeah,
in Nucla?
Nucla, yeah.
Oh, one of my best friends lives there.
Yeah, I've been wanting to go to Nucla for quite some time.
Yeah, that's a
Nucla
possibility.
Nucla was created by farmers union members, and Nucla is actually an acronym for New Utopian Cooperative Land.
Oh, really?
Land
Association.
agreement or land association, maybe
Wow.
something like that.
I thought Nucla was totally tied to the uranium boom.
I did too.
Seriously. You know, because there's Uravan and and I thought Nucla and I don't know, there's another one, right? Is there something else down there that's,
25th and 26th, did you say?
Natarita.
Or 24th and 25th or 25th and 26th?
25th and 26th.
Yeah, we have a cabin up at Trout Lake above Telluride, so that might just work out.
Let's see, then looking at the others, there's not a whole lot going on right now, but the senior council had a very successful day. It's on a Tuesday when we're doing a work session, just a open house where people can go to the senior center and learn about different volunteer activities and different organizations present there. And they had over 100 people attend that event. The 4-week event in May, My Life, the Last Chapter, which was sponsored by the senior council, was very successful. It was packed. The sessions in Basalt were, they had to turn people away. It was totally full. It was very well attended, very interesting subjects. They had really good presenters. Got a lot of people in the community thinking about their end of life wishes, what they want, how they want to be treated medically when they are getting into an end of life situation, and what do they want to happen to their remains after they're gone, and how to have family discussions about all this. And is very, very educational, very interesting. I think it's the kind of thing that we should do again in a future year. Let's see, looking at the other things, I don't see anything else that's really pressing right now. There's no meetings going on.
Great,
for-
thanks.
for
Thank you,
another
Steve.
month. Yeah.
Thank you. For me, we just heard from CORE. I know we're pretty excited about the 30th anniversary, and hopefully everyone can make it to something for CORE's 30th, recognizing Bill Sterling, who's basically been there since day one with CORE, and then remembering Randy Udall. His family will be coming in, and a lot of people who are involved with CORE and its formation since those 30 years will be involved. So I'm hoping that we can really get the community involved in all that. The QQ meeting was last week. Lisa Tasker went in my place. I had a board meeting, RAFTA retreat that was in conflict with it, so I had to choose, and I went to RAFTA instead. And Lisa sent me a message. I asked her what happened, and I haven't. I'm sorry. I'll get to that in a second. Board of Health. We just released an op-ed from Dr. Kim Levin about gun safety, and we have a gun safety seminar coming to town very soon. I will publish. I'll alert you to that right now on when it is, since that's a public health issue that's worth. Friday, June 21st, 5 to 5:30 p.m. at Pitkin County Library. A presentation by Sergeant Todd Haller from the Snowmass Village Police Department. Join parents, families, current and future gun owners, and all community members as we discuss gun storage and safe practices with guns. They'll be giving out free gun locks for people who would like to store their gun locks, probably trigger locks, I'm guessing, for people who'd like to store their guns. The sheriff's office provided the gun locks, and I'd say anybody who has guns around or is interested and concerned, this would be a great event to go to June 21st, Friday at 5 p.m. at the Pitkin County Library at the Dunaway Room. We're also, Board of Health, just doing some agenda meetings coming up, I think, in the next couple of days. So I don't know what they're thinking of right now for that. RAFTA, we just had our RAFTA retreat. Francie was there for part of it. I was there. We talked about.
I left so that I could be called adorable.
Right, so you could go. Right, so you could go to the food. You had to be at Food and Wine.
We
had to split up. We had to split up the responsibilities, and I drew the short straw, or the long straw. RAFTA is in negotiations presently with the union. That was publicized in the newspaper, and things are ongoing. I think the interesting thing that came from that whole conversation was that RAFTA pays higher wages to its drivers, I think, than certainly any other agency in the state, and we're number 9 in the entire country for compensation for drivers. And the RAFTA board has been very proactive in raising the pay for drivers. In the last few years, it's gone up 35-40%. It's gone up a lot, and so
Gone from, I think, 21 to 33 in starting pay, right?
right, yeah, and so in these times when things are so expensive, there's still wiggle room for negotiation, and that's where RAFTA is right now. I think this was Dan Blankenship's, was it his last meeting or second to last meeting as the RAFTA CEO? Kurt Ravenslog has been there for several years now, and he's stepping in, and it's actually going very smoothly. I'm looking forward to working with Kurt, as I think the rest of the board are. I don't have any RWAPA news right now. And let's see, I was going to get back to you regarding, let's see what Lisa said about QQ, if anything, and then I'll be done. Excuse me a sec. So the nice thing is they had a representative from the state at the QQ meeting, and he had a long list of topics on water topics for the state to talk about.
Summarize a little bit, Greg.
Oh, were you there? Did you go? Oh, great.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I can tell you what Lisa said after. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have those notes in front of me, but Robert something, he grew up 5th generation from a farm in Brighton, Colorado. Tried to get out of farming and found himself back in farming after having gotten a degree in molecular biology and working for a healthcare company. And he is now, I forget his title, but it's like specific to agricultural water use is his is kind of his focus for the state and for, I think, the CWCB. And, so a lot of the conversation was related to, what are the benefits that are being provided by ag use for water and through the use of water. A lot of conversation around, is there tools to monetize those benefits for farmers? So kind of brainstorming around how to monetize the way that water creates ecological and environmental benefit on ag lands, and talk about best use of water and efficiencies in use of water through crop management and stuff like that. So that is my basic takeaways of kind of what his role and conversation was.
Great, thank you. Yeah, his name's Robert Sakata. He's the Agricultural Water Policy Advisor for the Colorado Department of Agriculture. We have his contact info, and he did talk about USDA ag census data, which is kind of shocking when I first read it. Colorado's irrigated acreage has decreased by over 30%. That's more than 1 million acres over the last 25-year reporting period. Colorado's total farm expenses has increased over 117% over the last 25-year reporting period, while the national average is 17%. So
And crop prices have stayed the same.
And crop prices, have they stayed the same?
17% increase in cost to raise them and same price for selling them.
He says that regarding climate, statewide annual average temperatures warmed by 2.3 degrees Fahrenheit between 1980 and 2022.
Oh my goodness.
By 2050, annual temperatures are projected to be warm by plus 2.5 to 5.5 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Population growth, he just doesn't throw any numbers, but he said, well, of course, we'll increase water demands for municipal and industrial uses. And so the ag people are probably pretty concerned about that. He did give a list of topics he's heard traveling across the state. And I noticed really didn't seem like any of our local topics were on there. And so I knew Lisa was planning to go to it, and she brought up Lincoln Creek and Upper Roaring Fork issues. And she said she'd make sure he had that on his list, at least so he knows. He's the ag guy, but if we're 10% of the Colorado and we see this issue across the state, it could be water quality is compromised to an extent where he should have it on his list of topics.
We'll all be using those ceramic filters.
The filters, yeah, we probably ought to be already. And that's it. That's all I've got for now. Thank you. I'm going to move us on to board open discussion, and then we will try to cut out of here about 4 o'clock.
Yep, just a couple items from me. So in order for Patty to be able to vote at the NACO conference, we have to submit a form making her proxy. So just wanted to let the board know that we'll be doing that, unless there's any objections, in which case then one of you will be going to Florida to vote. And then wanted to note that we are getting ready to do a press release and make the application available for the property tax relief program. We had a few details that we had to work out. We're anticipating, I believe, that going out tomorrow at this point, with applications being open until August 2nd. Again, this will be a property tax relief program for households at or below 500% of the poverty level. We anticipate that we'll have upwards of 500 potential applications for the
500%
program.
of the poverty level, isn't that like $250,000?
No, it's of course I don't have it right in front of me right now, but it's I think closer to 150,000 for
Poverty
family.
level's 30,000.
About 20.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it depends how many people.
Yeah,
I'm
right,
forgetting the
okay.
table. I'm sorry.
150,000?
Yeah, and so we will be accepting applications until August 2nd. For those applicants that are qualified, the relief will be on a sliding scale, the minimum of $50, a maximum of $2,000, and we'll keep reporting to the board. I do want to note that Aspen Valley Hospital is a partner with us in funding this, and will also be included in the press release.
Why are they a partner?
They are a partner.
Why are they?
Why are they a partner?
Because they're a separate district, or?
Yeah, so they're a separate district. They collect a property tax also. I think they recognize housing as, one of the indicators of health that they are committed to in the community, and so they participate in the program to ensure that those who may have some vulnerabilities because of the increases in property taxes, we're getting some relief, and that they're participating in that.
And do you have to have a certain percent of increase in your taxes in order to qualify for the relief?
Well, you have to have paid them, and the refund won't exceed your increase, but it'll pay up to $2,000 depending on where you're at in the
Won't
federal
exceed
law.
your increase,
Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
And how will that be publicized? So the people.
We're going to be doing press releases, and I believe PSA. Have you been involved in those discussions? Well, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so it'll be a press release and then social media posts.
It'll
Okay.
be social media and what
we
else?
can't hear you.
Oh, you need a microphone,
Yep.
Rosa. Microphone, Rosa.
So yeah, press release and then a social media post. So it'll be on Facebook and Instagram, linked to the press release.
In the newspaper.
And in the
Should be in the newspaper. 'Cause
Well,
some
yeah,
people, like
if
some of
they
the people
cut-
I'm concerned
they
about
will.
don't use social media at
Like
all.
me.
Right, if you're not on and
yeah, and
you're.
I'm assuming they will get it from the press release.
Got it, okay, let's hope so.
And
How will the press release appear? Where will it appear?
on our Pitkin County website.
Yeah, so
Pretty sure people don't regularly look at our website.
No, but the idea is for our media outlets to pick it up.
Yeah,
and-
so yeah, we have
yeah.
them as contacts, and then that alert goes to them.
I have a question about that. I know I get calls from people, longtime residents, who really feel like compromised by the increase in the taxes, but I'm not sure they'll qualify for this program. So they're kind of in that, they make too much to qualify, but they're still getting hammered by the tax program, and it makes a difference to them if they're retired ski instructors, for instance, or people have just been here forever living in their ancient house. And I'm wondering, do we know if the program is hitting everybody it should, or available to everybody it should be, and perhaps could we adjust it if it needed to be tweaked So it doesn't cost us more, but maybe it's shared more equitably or more widely.
Well, one of the reasons we had presented different poverty levels to the board when we landed on this, and this was the highest one that we had looked at, the 500% of poverty level, which I think, Francie, as you're indicating, starts to reach into some lower level professional kind of position type of incomes and or professional level type of incomes and such, particularly for a family. But Greg, it would be a big push to redo the program or open it up again, both financially. We did not staff up to do this qualification like we did during COVID. So you know, we can see, my guess is there will be people who are not satisfied that.
Right, don't even qualify, right, of course. You'll get that. I guess, then I guess just let's find out how it worked.
Yeah, but that's why we chose the 500% of poverty is certainly the highest threshold or most generous threshold of any program we saw in the state by a large margin. Yeah.
Well,
You have hands up.
oh, hands, got two. Look at all these hands up. They're waving at us. Steve and then Kelly. Oh, Kelly.
Age before beauty.
I think it's you, Kelly, because Steve just pointed at you, I
But you
think.
tell she said age before beauty.
I know, so
No,
she.
Kelly had her hand up first. That's why I pointed to her.
Oh, okay.
Kelly, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever. Now I sort of lost what I was going to say. Oh, it would be really interesting after the program application closes if staff could bring back some profiles of people, of households that applied and were accepted or applied and were rejected. That would be interesting to understand if that information is able to be gleaned or if people would be willing to provide, qualitative information like that for us. And then what else was I going to say? Oh, I just was going to respond to Greg. The state gave, that blanket 55 grand off values, which applied to everybody. And that also had problems.
Right.
But that also felt inequitable and caused issues and reduced values and property taxes for people in ways that not everyone appreciated.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Whenever you do it, it has unintended consequences and some that are just, just hard to get around. Thank you for that. But I appreciate that. Yes, I'd love to see. Let's find out how it worked if we can. Steve?
So I had two other topics besides
okay.
what we've been discussing. If we're ready for our
We ready to move on? Yep, go ahead.
So we received a letter from the gentleman who wants to change the name of Grizzly Peak to name him after some mountain climber guy.
Thank you for bringing that up.
I personally like the name Grizzly Peak, and I have no association with this mountain climber guy. I've never heard of him, but I wish he would pick some unnamed peak in the state, and if he wants to name a 13er after this guy, but I would not support us supporting his proposal to change the name of Grizzly Peak.
Thank you, Steve. I agree. I had the same reaction. It's not like he was known in our community or part of the community in any way, really. It sounds like he was an avid mountaineer, as there are many. And yes, I like the name Grizzly Peak, and I don't think it needs to be renamed. There are peaks in the community that need to be renamed.
And also
I'm
the
not sure
names
that's
of
it.
some counties.
Yeah, and does he want to rename Pitkin County, for instance? Maybe we could talk. What was your second one?
The second item, I had a discussion with George Bohmfalk, who is Ben Bohmfalk's father. Ben is the mayor of Carbondale. So George is a retired neurosurgeon. He's a very nice gentleman. I really enjoy visiting with him. He has been pushing for a movement for getting different municipalities and counties around the country to do non-binding resolutions supporting Medicare for all. And I forwarded to John a sample of Mecklenburg County and I think North Carolina, I think it is, the resolution they passed. Boulder has passed a resolution. The city of Denver has passed a resolution. And I suggested to George, maybe if our board wanted to, that he could come and do a short presentation at a work session.
I would love that.
I just wanted to float the idea to you, and maybe John could send around the resolution from North Carolina, from a county there, just so we could see what he's thinking.
Yeah, I'd love that.
I think that would be great I'd love to extend an invitation for that. Great idea. Do you want to invite him at some point, Steve, or do we need to have it done by staff?
Well, I think he needs to get on the schedule through, with John, a time when it would work for him to come to a work session,
And I'm
or
wondering
zoom into a work session perhaps.
how much time does he need, I guess is the question I'd have. If he's just introducing it, we could do it in an open, a public comment and give him an extra minute or two, or do we need to
Well,
put
I
it in a work
thought
session?
maybe we could have, I think we need to look at this resolution from the other county, and maybe we could have that as part of our packet, so we could discuss that and see if we wanted to send, support a similar resolution, or maybe an identical one, just changing our name on it. But I would think no more than 15 minutes on a work session.
Great. John, I think three of us say we like that idea.
Yeah, did you say 15 minutes, Steve, or 50 minutes?
15.
Oh, sorry,
15.
15. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just I think a short presentation would be adequate.
So if it's okay, what I'd like to do is forward this to Lindsay and Jordana also to look at and make some comments on language, and then we can schedule some time.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks. Good suggestion, Steve. Anything else?
No, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, it's 4:02, and I told John we'd be out of here by 4. Kelly has something else. Well.
Too quick. Well, I'll try to be quick. We received an invitation from Representative Velasco, our request to meet with our board for an hour or so on July 9th. I just wanted to check in if there was any interest in doing that, or having like a working lunch and hosting her with you all.
I guess.
Tuesday it's a work session. That's why it's tricky for us to meet with her.
Right. An hour sounds like a long time, but I don't know what she has in mind. So we'd have to, I'd love to hear more.
I imagine she's gonna bring us up to date on legislative issues and ask what we're looking for. Last time I talked to her, that's kind of what it was. Do you agree with that, Kelly?
Yep. Anyway, that's what I would suggest, maybe just a working lunch for us, perhaps.
And that was on the 9th of July, is that what you
You
said?
don't have to decide that right now.
We can we'll look at it
John-
on our agenda for John. John, if we'll talk about it at our agenda meeting next,
Okay.
and we'll figure it
Great.
out. Thank you.
And then we received a letter from Eric Scarvin about his appeal on the North Star permit.
Yeah, it's about our fourth letter.
John, I don't know if you saw the public comment that came through our public comment portal, but
I
it
saw it. I read
said
it.
he appealed and then never heard anything, and I think we should follow up on that.
So the appeal was really more about the policy decision that the board made versus the specifics of the procurement. There really wasn't a basis to appeal the RFP process. I think the resolution that's really being sought now is to allow additional permittees on North Star.
Okay, it just sounded like the communication from Pickens County back to him was either he didn't hear back about what he thought was an appeal, and then or was told by Gary that there was no appeal. So I'm just confused about.
He is correct that was the communication went out. There wasn't really a formal appeal process to the permit. We had invited that conversation. We had invited that conversation with him, and that is why we had spoken to him about the board decision and the policy decision, and staff not having discretion to change the number of permits, that would have to be a board decision. And so he did, I believe, come in front of the board twice now in open discussion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different person.
Oh, it's different. Oh, okay, different person.
Okay, now I'm more confused than when we started. I thought that there was an appeal process because it was a procurement related thing that just like similar to like our ag lease appeal. Was there not something tied into this?
No.
Permit?
Yeah, there really was not. Not formally within the open space and trails, because it didn't come formally through our procurement process. And even if it had, they'd missed those timelines when they'd submitted, if we had followed those guidelines.
Got it.
There's a time frame if we.
No, I know. I thought that he had said he met the time frame and attached emails to that effect. So I'll just forward you the comment that we got.
Right, thank you.
I wouldn't mind revisiting that whole thing because, as several outfitters pointed out, they are better stewards than the private people. Mm-hmm. I think maybe more permits and more outfitters and permitting for paddleboard use up there.
Yeah, that's a conversation we've had over the years with open space, and that's why they were moving in the opposite direction and reducing the number of permits.
Yeah,
because some people thought, and we still see, we received a letter also from a neighbor who said that a guide service dropped off a bunch of people with paddle boards. A young woman got stranded on their property and drug ashore, soaking wet and freezing and afraid to go on, but the guide service was nowhere to be found. They had just dropped them off. And so it seems like there's a gap. We'd expect a guide to be with them, but in some cases, these guide services just drop them off and say, yeah, we'll pick you up at the bottom.
Well, a guide is different than an outfitter. An outfitter can just can outfit you with the equipment.
Right. Okay.
But a guide goes with you.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the situation was exactly and who was who, but I think that's what Gary has been trying to navigate. So on one hand, we've got people that are trying to reduce the activity up there, and meanwhile the businesses see an opportunity to increase their business up there, and so therein lies the problem, and that's a policy decision. I think maybe it's an ongoing policy conversation, but the idea was to reduce the number of active permits up there, for better or worse.
Active users.
Yeah.
Through limiting permits. Yeah, I don't know. I do know that outfitters on most bodies of water are the most responsible users.
Sure. Yeah, they know the rules, and they have permits to licenses.
They have a lot at stake.
Yeah.
Well, so Francie, I think, had made, I take that as a request to the rest of the board. Do you want to revisit this? I don't know if y'all need to
I would like to
consider
revisit it.
that.
Partly because of the people who felt burned by it, who were small, and, I can't remember how Gary made his decision. I heard him explain it the other day, but I forget what he said.
There is a committee and a scoring matrix, and that's why, Kelly, I think it looked a lot like a procurement process. That's kind of what we were following, so
Yeah.
that's probably where that confusion comes in.
Right.
I mean, I would love a check-in with open space because I thought they were going to gather data related to this approach to management and then report back out to us on it. I don't know if that's true and what the timeline was for that, but
It is
that would
true.
be what I think would be a good follow-up.
Yeah, but I think that probably would not happen till the end of the season to have that kind of report out. So if there's a desire to revisit that policy decision this year for those folks, then we need to do that quickly because there's only a few.
Well, that's kind of pulling the rug out from under the OST at this point.
Right.
To try and change it for right now, I don't.
Let's
no.
meet with
I
Garrett.
just
Let's
mean for the
circle
future,
back.
I would.
For the future, okay, that's
Yes,
why I wanted
sorry.
to clarify, and I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that the
No,
board
I don't
had
want
weighed
to do
in.
that to OST
Okay,
right now.
Okay.
Right, thanks. We could open up the conversation with Gary again, but I don't want to go in and change their rule
Yeah,
or knock their, yeah, as you said, kick the legs out from under them. We
Yeah,
can circle
one thing
back.
interesting about Eric's thing was that he did canoeing, and he said some people can't or won't go on a paddleboard, or whereas they could go on a canoe. And so I think his service was maybe different than some of the others, and that should maybe be given consideration in the future too, to have a variety of different options for how people can float down the river.
Right.
okay, so for
Thank you.
future discussion?
For future discussion. The last thing, just regarding the Grizzly Peak renaming, do we have a board consensus on that? I'd love to just, I don't want to rename Grizzly
I
Peak.
like the name Grizzly
I'm
Peak.
not interested in
Okay,
entertaining that.
so I'll just send him a note and tell him that we're not interested and we would not advocate for that. And I think that's part of the deal, so. Thank you very much. I'm going to call this meeting over at 4:11 PM,
Okay.
4 minutes ahead of schedule.
Kelly, can I call you on my way home?
Thanks, Andorra.
Yeah.